go. All right. So, good morning. I hope everyone's doing well. Today we are in week 8 and we have 4 topics up for discussion. We're going to talk about organic farming, Agrability, FSA and USDA, and land access from Land for Good. Unfortunately, our first speaker for the morning is from Norfolk, Rhode Island, and she is not available. She kind of ghosted me. But I do know a little bit about organic, and I did a little research just so we can cover the basics. So I'm going to go over it with us. I'm sorry, I lost my voice this weekend, so I'm a bit raspy. I apologize. So I wanted to start off the discussion about organic farming with talking to you guys. Like, what do you know about organic, and like, what do you think of it? And are you planning to go organic? Any of those questions, if you could turn off your mute and let me know what you think.
Yeah, I'm planning on going organic, which is we've been pretty organic on our farm, but I mean my dad still likes Miracle Grow, so trying to get him out of that. Um, but what do I know about it? No chemicals. I know there's like a really pretty intense process of getting it labeled organic. But yeah.
Great, thanks. And there's other options besides Miracle Grow, so we can get them off of that if you need to. Anybody else? Does anybody else plan to go organic?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mare. Okay.
Yeah, probably, but I don't know if I would go through the intense certification. So yeah, I don't know much about it.
Okay.
Why I'm here with you.
Yeah, yeah. Anybody else planning on going organic route? No. Does anybody buy organic food at the grocery store, at the farmers markets?
I
Like
do. Yeah,
Who's
I
that?
plan on doing organic. I noticed that most of the products sold at the farmers markets up in Maine that I'm interested are even the flower growers are organic. So I try really like the only thing I don't trust a lot of the products that even say Omri.
Hmm.
So that's my thing. It's like if you could talk about that a little bit, like how to know for sure. Because don't you have to keep records for a few? I'm sure you're going to talk about that. You have to keep
Yeah.
records of everything you use.
Yeah. Yep.
And so that's a little scary to me is the record keeping part too. Because
Yeah.
I'm not the best at doing that, you know?
Hmm. Yeah. That's understandable. Okay. Is there anybody who's like anti-organic in the group? Thinks this is a waste of time, doesn't care about it? No. Is that Eric? I saw a head nod. Sorry.
Uh,
Go ahead.
oh, like I try to do my garden organic, and I don't really think the whole certification thing is worth it.
Okay.
I think Joel Salatin had a good point of view where like if your customers know you, you don't need to get an organic certification because they know how you do things, and the certification program is so, I don't know, I feel like it's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people feel that way. And Joel has a very transparent, his whole philosophy is to be very transparent in his whole production, correct? Like that's one of his sticks, right? So I could see why maybe he doesn't do the organic certification. And Eric, you gave me a head nod. What did you think about it?
I think it's probably a lot of work up front, but then it's worth it in the long run, whether you get certified or not, just from a sustainability point of view. It
Like
seems
it,
like, from what I've learned, it seems like if you start using a lot of the chemicals and things like that, it's kind of a slippery slope, as organic is going to be more sustainable naturally.
okay, yes, okay, great. All right, so we're going to talk about Arthur. Do you want to tie into how you feel about organic?
Yeah, I think that kind of echoes a lot. I'm sorry, I was kind of running a little late. Echoes a lot of what other people are saying. I grow organically, but I'm not sure if the price premium from being certified is worth the additional kind of labor as far as documentation goes. I know that especially the MACA standards are pretty labor intensive, and I kind of go with the Salton philosophy of if I'm happy to have people on the farm and showing them my process. I think that's as valuable, if not more valuable, than the certification.
Thank you. All right, so I'm not going to tell you whether or not you should or should not grow organically. The person that was going to speak today would definitely recommend it. I know I've heard her speak before at other like farmer events. But I'm going to give you some of the information that I found about organic, and you can make your own decision. And I think a lot of farmers that I have spoken with are on the same fence where it's not necessarily worth the hassle. People will still buy their products with or without organic certification. And although I have spoken with other farmers who say that people will leave their stall at a farmer's market if they're not organic. So it's really a choice. I think you need to know your market and who you're selling to, and if they want organic, and if it's something that you believe in for sustainability reasons, then it's a way to go. But we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about some of the programs that there are out there to help you cost share some of the organic certification process. And you can let me know if you change your mind about anything. Okay, so let me share my screen. Share screen. Here we go. Doo, doo, doo. It's taking a second. Why do I have a black screen? Please don't do this to me today. There we go. Yay. Okay. So organic is a labeling term for food and other agricultural products that have been produced according to the USDA organic standards, which require operations to use practices that cycle resources, conserve biodiversity, and preserve ecological balance. The USDA National Organic Program, often seen as NOP, develops and enforces the standards for organic crops, livestock, and agricultural products. So consumers can feel confident purchasing organic goods. And that's kind of the USDA definition of it. There are three kind of standards that we're going to go over: crop standards, livestock and poultry standards, and then handling. We're not going to discuss too much at this point. So this definition is from MAFCA, which is the main organic organization. They're certifying agency, and they use it a little differently than the USDA. So it is federally regulated. Before a farmer or food producer can start selling foods labeled as organic, an accredited third-party inspector, such as MAFCA or Bay State and some of the other states, must visit your business, ensure that organic practices are being followed, and then certified organic producers are inspected annually and must keep careful records of their practices to ensure compliance with federal standards. Just kind of want to see you a little bit. There we go. So this is the NOP that I mentioned briefly. The National Organic Program is a federally regulated program that develops and enforces consistent national standards for organic production of agricultural products sold in the United States. And they also work with third-party organizations to certify farms and businesses. So everyone kind of knows that, right, so far? And this is kind of, I think, also what we know as consumers. So for produce and grains, we are expected to use, if you follow the program, natural fertilizers, eco-friendly pest control, and you're supposed to protect your soil and water. For meat, dairy, and eggs, They must be raised on pasture, they must be treated humanely, and no growth hormones or antibiotics can be used. And for packaged goods, you can't have any GMOs in there. You have to be able to trace those items from farm to store, and you can't use any artificial colors, flavors, or preservatives. So that crop standards, this is what we as growers need to know. Land must have had no prohibited substances for at least 3 years before the harvest of that organic crop. Soil fertility and crop nutrients will be managed through tillage and cultivation practices, crop rotations, cover crops, and then supplemented with animal and crop waste materials. And there are some allowed synthetic materials. Crop pests, weeds, and diseases must be controlled primarily through the management practices, including physical, mechanical, and biological controls. When these practices are not sufficient, a biological, botanical, or synthetic substance can be used if it's approved and it's on the national list, which I'll show you where to find that national list. Operations must use organic and other plant livestock when available. And the use of genetic engineering, ionizing radiation, and sewage sludge is prohibited. I just looked over at the screen and someone's like dropping balloons. Did anybody else see that? Was that you, Eric? Okay. You really like that slide. All right.
I have no idea why I'm not doing anything. I didn't touch me.
All right. So we'll talk. I didn't use all of the livestock and poultry standards, but I kind of pulled some of them more for poultry because I think more people are interested in that. So there are more standards than this on this list, but these are the basics. So livestock and poultry standards apply to animals used for meat, milk, eggs, and other products sold, labeled, or represented as organic. So some of these requirements are that dairy animals and animals for slaughter must be raised under organic management for the last third of gestation or no later than the second day of life for poultry. Producers must feed livestock agricultural feed products that are 100% organic, but they may also provide allowed vitamin and mineral supplements. And I think that is a tricky one for some people. It's finding feed that is organic. Preventable management practices must be used to keep animals healthy. Producers may not withhold treatment for sick or injured animals. However, animals treated with prohibited substances may not be sold as organic. I think there's a typo in that. All organic livestock and poultry are required to have access to outdoors year-round. Animals may be temporarily confined due to documented environmental or health conditions. And then, so this national list, the national list of allowed and prohibited substances, there's a link here. You can just like Google national list organic and it pops up. And I just kind of pulled up I took an example from that. So for example, for herbicides, weed barriers, they will have a list of what substances you can use. So if you're going to use a herbicide, it needs to be soap-based. Mulches that you can use, oops. I lost it. Okay. Newspaper or recycled paper without glossy or colored ink. So it's like very specific. Plastic mulches and covers you can use and things like that. So you can go on that national list and look anything up. And then also your certifying agency, whoever that is. I have a slide later on that kind of shows you who you go to depending upon what state you're in. But basically, anytime you have any question about a substance that's maybe not on the organic list, or you're not sure if you're using it the same way the organic the list, then you just contact them and they'll let you know whether or not you can use it. And I wanted to go over some organic labeling, which we might see. So this organic products are labeled according to the percentage of organic ingredients that they have. So something that says like 100% organic, you can use the seal. It has organic ingredients and processing aids. There's no GMOs. We talked about that. There's a certification required. But but you guys can take a look at these, but just to know when you're out there as a consumer, what you're actually looking at, because we all know labels can be tricky. Okay, so I talked about the certifying agency briefly. To help you find a certifying agent, the Organic Integrity Database has an organic certifier locator. It's updated regularly. It's another word I can't say. And there's a link to it here. And I kind of, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, all go through Bay State. Also Maine, you can use Bay State as well, but most people I think use MAFCA. And then Vermont, they have their own Vermont Organic Farmers. And they also, I think, use Bay State as well. And then here is an important organization. It is the Northeast Organic Farming Association, NOFA. And there's one in every state in the Northeast. Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Connecticut, New Jersey, New York, Rhode Island, and Vermont. And these, I think we should, if you're in any state, even if you're not planning on going to growing organically, it's a good idea to go on these web pages and sign up for the news list just to kind of see what's happening around you. They give workshops and farm tours and printed materials, and they often have programs available to help you get your organic certification. That this is who was supposed to speak to us this morning was NOFA Rhode Island. NOFA Rhode Island is super small. They don't have very many volunteers that help out with them, which is I think why she's not here today. In some of the other states like NOFA New Hampshire, I follow them on Instagram because they put out so much good information all the time. And then obviously MAFCA is the next slide, but they are just huge and they put out a ton of information. And I've been to some of their farm tours, even though I'm not certified organic, it's just awesome. You can learn so much by going on a farm tour. Highly recommend that you become involved in this organization or just follow them. So this is the MAFCA, the Maine Organic Farmers and Gardeners. This is where I believe the organic movement started. Organic, and they have a definition. Organic refers to an agricultural system that is founded on the natural world. Organic farmers are stewards of the land and work to build soil, promote ecological balance, and encourage biodiversity. Growing and eating organic food supports human and environmental health while fostering thriving local economies. So I did a little digging and I wasn't able to find anything in the scientific literature that shows that organically grown food is any better nutritiously than non-organic food. It's not to say that it is or isn't, but I don't think the research is there quite yet. But some of the practices that they use in growing the food may, I think a lot of people feel are more ecologically safe. That's up to you to decide.
Is it the same for GMOs?
GMOs. So, even in class, that's a hotly debated topic, and not the professors won't even answer that question, really. So I think my takeaway from it was that we have been genetically changing and altering our food since the beginning of agriculture. There are just some more conventional methods where you're just crossbreeding plants and you know, getting the desired traits that you want from corn. Like corn used to be so much different than, and then they bred it and bred it and bred it in a kind of a more natural way. And so we've been changing food for a long time. Now, when you go in and you are using new advanced methods to change food, I don't think people know exactly what the results of that are yet, but our class and Christina, like they're not saying it's good or bad. That's a choice that you have to make for yourself. Obviously the organic movement's gonna tell you don't use GMOs, but there are some benefits to using GMO seed. You're potentially using a seed that is resistant to disease or pest pressure, and therefore you need to use less chemicals on your crop. So you know, what's important to you. Is it more important for you to use less chemicals and use this altered seed, or vice versa? Sorry, I can't answer it. Okay. So that was fast. So there's this top program, Transition to Organic Partnership. And I would recommend, if you're planning on going organic, reaching out to one of those, the NOFA or MAFCA organizations. They have money to help you transfer to organic, and they also can help get you a mentor and guide you through all the steps. So they provide technical assistance and wraparound support for transitioning and existing organic farmers. They connect transitioning farmers with mentors for at least 1 year after certification. They build mentoring networks to share practical insights and advice. They provide community building opportunities like train the mentor support, technical assistance. I'm pretty sure if you want to be a mentor, you can get paid to be a mentor. And they provide workshops and field dates covering topics for organic production. And they also have this other program called soil carbon restoration. I think they're trying to incentivize you capturing carbon in your land. So principles of soil carbon sequestration include minimizing soil ecosystem disturbance by reducing or eliminating chemical inputs and tillage. They keep the soil covered as much of the year as possible, which is a good practice if you're going organic or not. Keep living roots in the soil for as much of the year as possible. Promote biodiversity above ground and below ground through inoculation, cover crop diversity, crop rotation, and integration of perennials with annuals and beneficial insects and livestock into the system. All good practices, even if you're not organic. If you want more information about that, NOFA has, just type in carbon restoration with NOFA. They'll and a ton of information pops up, but you can support NOFA through Healthy Soils policy work. You can attend a field day. There's a NOFA winter conference, which is pretty good, I've heard. And there's also a summer conference, and there's some links here to some articles. And this is a QR code. If anybody wants to scan it, you can just take a picture of it right now, and it will bring you to that top program through USDA, and NOFA will help you to get that program going. And I think that's it, guys. That's all I really have for you. So are there any questions?
Do you know if you mentioned that the university professors don't really talk about GMOs?
We talk about it, but they don't take a stance as to whether or not they're good or bad.
What about the what are they called, chimeras, where they kind of take, I guess, one species and they splice the genes with another species to try to like get a trait?
Yeah. Again, they don't tell us whether or not it's good or bad. It doesn't. What do you feel? How do you feel about that?
I think just like the regular, where they're finding like the desirable traits and they're blending them is okay. Kind of scares me when they're mixing species, though.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel the same way about that. Are there any questions about organic certification that I didn't go over that you'd like me to find the answers to for you? Because I can do a follow-up too. No, I'm sorry, that wasn't exactly the talk I was hoping for, but you know, you have 30 percenters, I guess one of them couldn't. Those aren't bad odds for one person not to show up. So we do have another talk from Agrability at 10 o'clock. So if you'd like, you can take a break until then, or we can stay on and talk about any other topics that maybe we breezed over at this point, up until this point in the program. If you guys have any other questions. I like hearing my raspy voice. I feel like I'm like a new personality today. So, um, no, you don't want to hear it. Fine. Fine. All right. You guys can take a break and I'll see you back at 10. Does that sound good? Thank you. Appreciate it. Michaela, apparently, like your sister and I work together. Did you know that?
Okay, so that makes sense, but
Yeah. So when
um,
I saw you originally, I was like, oh, she looks familiar.
yeah.
And then, yeah, we worked at the Y together for a bit, a while, a long time ago.
Oh yeah, yeah. A lot of people confuse us sometimes, even though we
You're
don't
not
look
exactly, you look different for sure.
terribly alike, but yeah,
No.
that makes sense.
Yeah. So, and we
That
are
makes
like
sense.
Facebook friends and because we have children the same age. So, um, I don't know. I've,
Not
but
surprised. It's cool, you know?
yeah, a small world,
Rhode
small world.
Island.
Yes, that's true. All right.
Didn't they just change wasn't there, sorry, this is as your people are jumping off. Wasn't there something with DEM that they were no longer the third
Yeah.
party and then they just switched everybody to Bay State? Does that
Yep.
happen?
Yep. Yep. That
There are a
happened.
lot of people dropping off who were, because I lived and worked on Simmons Farm in Middletown. They
Hmm.
were certified organic for, 30 plus years.
Hmm.
And I'm just curious of places that have been established and have that, how that works. I mean, it doesn't apply to me because I'm new, but I'm just curious
The
what that looks
differences
like.
between the
Well,
two.
just are people going to be continuing with it? Is it going to just change what people have been doing, or is it going to be kind of seamless?
I don't think it's going to be seamless, but I honestly don't know the answer to that question. I mean, I guess time will tell the changeover goes.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, Bay State is the organization. We at URI have a certified organic field. We had one, and we had trouble getting it recertified. And then there's no financial reason for us to keep it certified. We don't sell organic produce or anything, but we do maintain um, the practices of organic in case we ever want to go back in and certify it at some point. So we're still keeping records and not using anything on the field that would prohibit it from being organic for 3 years or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I've heard from other farmers like it's just not worth the trouble.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
And there's the real organic movement, which is a little bit different, which I can't speak to too much either. But I believe it's on top of the organic certification. You can get an additional certification that from this peer-reviewed organization that shows that you are doing more of the ecological practices. Because even if you get something that's on the OMRI list, it could be harmful to pollinators and things like that. So it's just saying like, hey, yes, we follow the organic standards and also we follow these like regenerative agricultural practices, basically.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Didn't know there was like a division, or not a division, but maybe.
Yeah, there's a movement of farmers who recognize that the organic certification isn't the end all be all to being like to having good agricultural practices.
Right, right. Because if I'm
So
getting
Arthur,
organic soil from
yeah,
the other side of the country, that doesn't, or
right.
not even soil, but organic
Yeah,
food from
and
the other
if
side of
you
the
if you if you're pulling in inputs from halfway around the world and you're using all this carbon in order to do so, it's not necessarily a sustainable practice, right?
Yeah.
So you want to get your inputs from a locally sourced as possible. Yeah, Arthur, are you seeing the real organic movement where you are?
I mean, I've heard a lot about it, like through podcasts and such.
Yeah.
The farmer
Ooh,
I
can you
part
recommend a good podcast, Arthur?
I really like
With
one. It's called The Thriving Farmer.
Cool.
A guy called Michael Kilpatrick. I think he does like a weekly show, and it's a pretty long catalog. He's interviewed most of the kind of the big names at one point or another. So he talks about it a lot, and my takeaway is mostly that like the biggest complaint a lot of people have about organic is it's kind of been watered down to the point where the real organic is I think it puts a lot more emphasis on like you have to be growing in soil. Like you
Yeah.
can like there's like hydroponic operations which are certified organic, which is doesn't really make sense in my mind. I think a big important part of it's like the soil biology and the sustainable nature of that. Like if you're growing hydroponically, obviously all of your inputs are not necessarily synthetic, but processed in a way that's kind of just like it's not sustainable to my mind. So yeah, the real organic's more about like kind of creating like full ecosystems of nutrient cycling on farm, which is the part of organic that I get more excited about. But yeah, I haven't seen anyone. I know I work at a farm, like an organic vegetable operation, not mine, but one I part time at, and he's a big proponent of MAFCA and being certified. And his point is, he does some wholesaling, so it's easier to get a higher price point wholesale if you're organic. And he's also just big about like the whole like advocacy thing. Like the more people that are certified, the more leverage the whole movement has. So he's big on it for that reason primarily.
What a wonderful comment. Why didn't you say that in class? That's
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
perfect. No,
I
I
we
should have
had a big
asked.
day for the eclipse yesterday, and I'm still just catching up.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really valid point. Because
I'd be happy to repeat myself later if you'd like.
thanks. I do have it recorded. I've learned how to cut out the chit chat in the middle.
Okay.
So I can take out the part where we talk about who we know, Michaela, but I might leave this little section in because that's good stuff. And do you also listen to the No-Till Farmers podcast? That's not the correct.
Oh, you know what? I don't listen to that one. I feel like I've heard it once or twice before, but I should probably add that to the rotation. I'll drop in the name of the Thriving Farmer into the chat.
Thanks.
Yeah, do that.
Yeah, it's called No-Till Market Gardener podcast.
Yeah, I
And
have that one.
a couple seasons ago was like super good. I haven't listened to this season yet. Some episodes are better than others, but there's a lot of inspirational because they interview different farms. So there's some good
Yeah.
stuff on there on the
I always shop around and kind of like read the description or the show notes or whatever and make sure it's going to be something like I'm not as interested in cut flower production, so I might go ahead and skip a podcast like that or something that's fully cattle focused. But it's all still interesting and good to like get you more ideas, and the conversations tend to wind over all kinds of stuff, so it's helpful just to kind of get your brain working.
Yeah, regenerative. I don't know this podcast, Abby.
Oh, that's the old farmer that was like one of our first classes. That's the guy
Yeah.
that he was talking about.
Oh, okay.
That's his podcast. Yeah, it's really good. He's got new people on every week. And he's like really big in that world.
Okay, cool. Yeah, there's a whole certification for regenerative farms now too. I don't know much about that. It's I think it's a similar thing to the Real Organic program, just like a new organization trying to do regenerative certification, but I haven't interacted with anyone that's looked into that at all, so I can't really speak to it.
They started in Rhode Island last year. They did a like a festival, Regen Ad Festival. So it was like a weekend long thing where different people came and talked, and it was cool. A lot about soil health, mostly.
Nice.
Yeah, and different practices of, like no-till versus, covering your crops with cloth and different ways to keep weeds out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I wonder, do you know if you want to be a seed saver, would you have to be certified organic?
I'm not sure
if you're gonna sell your seeds as organic,
Yeah.
then you have to be certified organic. I'm pretty sure, right? That would make sense.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. And the whole seed thing is kind of weird for organic because it's like you can use non-organic seed if you can prove that the seed you want's not available as organic seed. And the price difference tends to be pretty substantial too. So as far as organic versus non-organic seed. But yeah, I think that as far as saving seeds go, I'm pretty sure if you want to be like, there's always some weird regulations surrounding like you have to get, I know at least in Maine, if you want to sell like vegetable starts, you have to get like a special like it's like $25 a year license. There's just like some more regulation around the breeding and the like nursery stuff. So I'm not sure if that applies to seeds as well if you want to be selling seeds.
Yeah, there's
Um,
like the Seed Saver exchange program where you can get certified as a seed saver. So it's like
Interesting.
heirloom seeds. Here, I'll put the website in. I
Yeah.
know the herbal farm I was working at, or I still work at, they're certified for the Seed Saver thing. I should ask them if they're also certified organic, which I'm guessing they are. I'm guessing you'd have to be if you're selling organic, if you're selling medicine. I don't know.
Hmm.
Okay, I have to go water my plants.
Okay.
Be back.
Actually, I should probably do the same thing.
Yeah, I'm gonna go off screen for a couple of minutes.
All right, we'll see
All
you
right.
guys in a minute.
Okay. Joe, okay. Thank you.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Joe Ricker. I retired from the Army in June of 2022. Did a couple deployments, had a couple of times in DC. But I started about 2016. I kind of categorize it as a 2018 timeframe when I planted the apple trees that I became an orchardist and a beekeeper out here in just east of Indianapolis, Indiana. I am also a consultant, and that's why I'm here today with Agrability. I do their veteran outreach, which includes helping people or discussing with people with that are veterans with disabilities, kind of how to get past some of those physical challenges. I am not a what they call a certified assistive technology professional, but I certainly today will hopefully show you some resources that will provide you kind of maybe a better or more comfortable experience on your farm and show you some opportunities. Featured farmer in 2023. I just got I'm out of the intern phase for the Purdue Master Gardener. And if you've ever, Trisha, does URI have a Master Gardener program out there?
We do, and I'm a master gardener too.
It's an awesome program.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how cool it really was to get that and how it really fills in a lot of gaps when it comes to agriculture and other things. And then I have a couple nonprofits as well. So really my passion is to help veterans get into some of the resources that are available. And it's all about that one veteran at a time. It's very hard to grab onto and change the world for 200 veterans. You know, just grab onto one, you make their day a little happier with farming and get them into agriculture, and I think we're doing well there. So, couple things. I'll talk to you first about the mission of Agrability. So, Agrability is a USDA funded through a organization within USDA called NIFA, and what they do. And you have to apologize. I have to apologize. I forgot what NIFA stood for off the top of my head. But what they do is they are a part of Purdue as a national program. And then each state has programs as well, up to 22 states. And the reason 22 is that's as much as USDA funds. So it's a grant. So every 3 years, Purdue and the Agrability team has to put in to renew the grant. And those 22 states will change every couple of years. And the hope with the 22 states is that you kind of create a synergy at a university where it will go on. And then when the grant is up, another state gets an opportunity to address this in their state. And it's really a funding constraint that holds it back. But fingers crossed that the Farm Bill will have more opportunities out there. So Agrability is out there to enhance the quality of life for farmers, ranchers, and any agricultural worker with disabilities. And you'll see the list. I'll kind of define some of the disabilities, but we really cover anything from PTSD to TBI and vision and amputations and other things. So doesn't matter how it was created, whether it's a veteran or not. About 30% of our people that we help have served in the armed services, so they're mostly veterans. There's a large quantity of veterans. I'll say not mostly, but a large quantity of veterans. And we do this through a couple ways, through education. We do some hands-on assistance if we're in a state where we're available to do that. And then we help to either minimize or eliminate obstacles that block success. So some people will, think of this mainly in a large scale. It's not necessarily like the big crops here in Indiana are corn, soy. It's not necessarily corn, soy. Sometimes it's just somebody who gets pleasure from beekeeping and how to do better at beekeeping ergonomically. I know as a veteran myself with 90% disabilities, mostly from arthritis and injury, that it can wear and tear, 8 hours on a farm trying to do repetitive motions for pruning apple trees or moving a beehive, really can get taxing. So these are the states currently with projects. There's 21 state projects, 7 affiliates, and a national program. So the important thing to note is that this changes a little bit. We've lost Washington in September, will go away, the state of Washington. California will be added. And so it does have some variation because, like I said, every year states put in for it and states change. Affiliate programs are ones that have kind of that continuation of service being funded by the university. So if you're not familiar, Trisha, are they familiar with the land grant university systems?
We discussed it briefly in our first class, so you can go over it if you'd like.
Okay, I didn't want to repeat too much. So every state has a land grant university. It's the ones that are in charge of your extension program, and then there are universities also that are and those are designated by the federal government. So that's the ones that really are supposed to project within the state the opportunities for agriculture. So they have the extension systems, they have the um, they have the eligibility to put in for the Agrability projects. They also have the Master Gardener program. So all that agriculture funding, when you put in for a grant, you have to be designated sometimes as a land grant institution. There are also some states that have more than one because at times the government has decided to, I believe they're called 1890s, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Tricia. To your head nod and thank gosh I got that one right. So there are institutions that are designated for underserved or socially disadvantaged, and then there are ones that are designated for American Indians. So you'll see those throughout. I've visited a couple of those. They're amazing institutions, but they are also subsidized and eligible to put in for the grants as well. So there's 21 state projects now that have Agrability. Like I said, 7 are affiliates, so they're kind of that bridge between getting the next grant. We hope Rhode Island puts in for it soon. And every year the Agrability program comes up for a state land grant institution to put in for it, like URI. But also there is a national program, and the national programs here out of Purdue and Indianapolis. Trying to stay away from Purdue today. There's a little bit of upsetness over some basketball game yesterday. So just trying to lay low for Purdue today. So who do we serve at Agrability? We don't turn anybody who says they have a disability away, although we will tailor the assistance to meet the disability. Sometimes it's not as much as a physical lifting. Sometimes it is a memory, like with a TBI or autism or PTSD. So we'll tailor it and talk to them, based upon that. And we don't only just talk to them. If we have the available resources, we'll go out and we'll do farm visits also. Farm visits are very valuable because you get the holistic look on the approach the farmer's taken, and you can maybe see little parts throughout their day on how they do things that you maybe be able to provide recommendations. And I'll show a few of the simple toolboxes we have out there as well that you can look at and see. And you'll see sometimes just gardening is adjusting the angle on a rake or a hoe so that you can get that ergonomic pull a little better, or that force a little better. We have a gentleman down in South Carolina that we've assisted, and he has not sleep apnea, but he falls asleep driving his tractor. So we've gotten him the worked with him, and then the vocational rehab and VA out in South Carolina to get a little device that goes behind his ear so that when he leans his head to start to fall asleep, it buzzes and wakes him up. Agrability does not have money directly to buy people devices like that. What Agrability does is we have a really great knowledge and working relationship with vocational rehab where they've really come to trust us on the agricultural questions. And so we tie a person together with state resources and say, okay, here's an individual, they're doing agriculture. We have one of our assisted technology professionals come out there and say, this is what they need to do to continue to farm. Loss of limb, how do you get in the tractor? There's a gentleman out in Texas I met, a veteran, Iraqi freedom veteran, lost his right arm. And if you've ever noticed, a tractor is made for a person with working with a right arm. So he could not, easily, without crossing his body, get to his controls for his tractor. So Agrability out in New Mexico, sorry, it was New Mexico. Agrability out in New Mexico worked with him and the vocational rehab and the VA. So they used his VA documentation for his injury, sent it to vocational rehab, explained to them that it is his occupation to use the tractor, and then tied it all together where state vocational rehab got the tractor adjusted for a person with left arm and hand capability. So there's many stories out there, and they go across all the disabilities as you can see. And again, sometimes it's deep, right? So loss of a limb from your right side is sometimes is more significant or harder to adapt for than maybe like myself who has arthritis in both of my shoulders, or maybe it's maybe a work time type of learning environment where I just have to learn better ways of doing things like using a hoe or a rake, and also pruners and what type of pruners I use, vice, a full vocational rehab. Sometimes it's just adapting the way you do things and knowing how to adapt the way you do things. So Agrability will work with them to show kind of maybe not a farm visit, but maybe, hey, and like I'm going to show you today, a little bit about check out the toolbox and check out these options to make it more comfortable. So some of the priorities and the way we do the services is we do direct assistance, like I talked about, site visits, consultations. We do some business planning because sometimes, there's finances that have changed. And then we have what are called assisted technology professionals, and that's that support for them, making sure that everything works out and that it meets the need. We do workshops and online programming and resources just like this today. We just got past our national workshop in March down in Georgia, and then we do regional workshops throughout the country all the time. And Trish, I'll drop this on you, Trish, if you want. Is maybe we should talk about doing one on the Northeast. Would be kind of neat for a regional workshop. I know we have some interest in Maryland as well. So. Also, we do networking. So, a lot of times when you're in a traumatic situation like that, it's also about peer support, knowing other people. We have videos out there to show people that have been able to successfully continue farming after some significant losses or significant injuries. And then, it's a little bit of marketing, right? We don't want to be taking in federal funds and sitting quietly. We want to make sure that people know that we're out here and we're working on some relationships with the VA. A lot of the VAs know about us now, and other things where we're trying to just really get into making sure people know that if they come across or have an injury that needs adaptation to reach out to us. So what we're kind of doing kind of in the veteran space is we do a lot of national outreach. If you've not heard about it, and Trisha's probably mentioned it, the Boots to Business. There's a farmer program for that now, and that just was yesterday by Holly Acres out of the Northeast VBOC. I do phone and email mentorship. If somebody calls me up or emails, or I see something posted on Facebook, I'll usually respond and say, hey, give me a call and let's talk through it, because there are benefits out there for both Agrability and other things for veterans out there. SkillBridge is another great opportunity if you're still in service. DoD SkillBridge is the last 3 to 6 months you can intern, and we do interns with Agrability. We've had, to include myself, because I was a DoD SkillBridge intern with Agrability, we do have another one that's going to come off in April, and we have about 3 or 4 more in the hopper to come on this year. So it's really a good experience, because in SkillBridge, it's about that transitioning of somebody. So at Agrability, we try to help that person understand, their VA or their physical challenges, and then get into the opportunities of agriculture as well. Because, like me, I came out of service. You get the 90% disability rating. You want to be a farmer, or you want to be in agriculture. How do I do that? And that's where Agrability helps out. USDA also has a veteran beginning farmer program sponsored by the military veteran liaison Manshi Ramdis out of USDA. So that's another good program that we help with as well. Then, as I mentioned, the Department of Veterans Affairs, which is also is usually the first place we go to when it comes to assisted technology for veterans. We started a partnership with them through the compensated work therapy program. We're working through that as well. And then, if you didn't know, the VA has a program throughout called the VA Farms program. And we help with the VA Farms program because people come into those areas needing assisted technology. So we stay in contact with the people that run their programs. That program started about 3 or 4 years ago before COVID. It got an extension. There are about 7 farms left in the country that are self-funded through the VA. And then hopefully sometime when the farm bill comes out, we get a little more definition from what the VA farms program is going to be in the future. Some people were taking it as not solid agriculture, but maybe backyard gardening, which is fantastic if it helps somebody out. Some people were getting into some really hardcore agriculture, such as beekeeping and other farm visits and the like you're doing at URI. So just something to keep aware of, and to know that the VA is really trying to figure out where agriculture lays in the VA as both a therapeutic and job opportunity, and hopefully we can help shape that as well. I do a veteran community of interest. I'm sure Trisha's talked a lot about this for opportunities there, but there are tons of programs out there that are nonprofits that help veterans get into agriculture. I'll tell you, there's some are good ones, and there's some that go up and down based upon leadership and other things. But in general, I think there's a lot of them out there with good hearts that help veterans get into ag. We as Agrability support all of them, because you'll notice that some of them, like the Columbia Center for Urban Agriculture in Missouri, they're doing ag with a veteran that probably has that it most likely has a disability. So Agrability partners with them to be able to show them how to do things, or how to use it, how to do things on their nonprofit farm with assisted technology. And across the board, we do that whenever asked or appropriate. So I'm going to go into some of the fun stuff real quick, and I'm going to show you kind of the Agrability website. It'll pop up right here. I'm going to stop sharing, I think, in let me get to I'm going to stop sharing 1 minute and switch this over. So I apologize if I don't look at the screen. I'm looking at my upper screen a little bit, but right here you'll see can everybody see the Agrability website okay? Thanks. So when it comes to Agrability, we do a lot of stuff within the website. And I just wanted to go through a few things. This is Mr. Ed Bell, who was a one of the first Agrability clients. And you can see kind of him getting into his wheelchair and either into the tractor or into his wheelchair. But you'll notice this is a John Deere tractor with an adaptive lift device. And he goes from his chair to his wheel to his tractor via this device. I'll go down a little bit, and what I want to highlight, because there's a lot of times, veterans don't have a catastrophic injury such as Mr. Bell has, and it's what they want to do is maybe just look up, hey, how do I do something better? And they don't want a full visit, right? So they don't necessarily need the of somebody to come on their farm or their property. So what we have is the toolbox. So if somebody wants to maybe throw in the chat what they're doing, be happy. Yeah, thanks for NIFA, National Institute of Food and Agriculture. And then anybody want to throw in the chat what they're doing, and we can help maybe do a little search on it. Okay, nothing heard. Hopefully, I'm not putting you to sleep. But what we'll do is let me put in beekeeping. So if you put in beekeeping, just in the Agrability under the toolbox database and you hit search, it's kind of like Google when it's working, but I guess it is not today. Let me see. Wow, that is, we'll go back to that and see if that'll close up. I'm gonna give you a unshare for 1 second. Maybe if I clean my browser, maybe it'll work.
I have seen you use it in the past. I know it works. I've looked at it. We actually used the search when we were applying for the grants to see about some tools to get so we could do some workshops. So the beekeeping stuff is really cool. Is there anyone in the class who's planning on doing bees? No?
I may, I don't know. I have a
Is that
lot, I have a, it's further on down the road, that's for sure.
And Danielle's one of our veterans who's going to be moving up to Maine, Joe.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Joe, I got a question for you.
Danielle.
Let me put myself on. Sorry, I'm using my phone today, so it's like all over the place. I have a question as far as tools go. So they make all these garden tools for very tall, lanky men. And I'm like 5'2", and I cannot find ergonomic tools that like are the right size for me. So is there any like resources for getting tools kind of fit to your size?
So that's actually a great question, and I can throw out there a great opportunity. So there are tools made for women, and there are tools made for ergonomics. Let's see if I can find a quick one. I'm trying to find yep, here's one. And so if you go into the Agrability toolbox, it will come up with items like this. So you can see where the handle is kind of shaped a little differently, and it allows for a better leverage.
Mhm.
So for the hand wrist, they also have, and I think it's the same company. So at Agrability, we don't endorse any company. If they come to us and they say, hey, we want to put something out there, we'll put it in the
Right.
toolbox for people to see. They sometimes have I'm looking for a little arm device. Yep. No, that's not it. It's similar to this. You see that Petsy Easy Grip arm support? Now that's made with a little hole on it where it will go into that tool, but they
Mhm.
make these where you can attach them to longer things like a tree limb cutter or a
Uh-huh.
rake, and it will kind of almost put the force of that at a lower part of your arm
Right.
so that it's not as impacting, especially when your hands are above your head.
Yeah.
Um, I would also throw out the opportunity to you that the VA has come to us and said, "Hey, we will 3D print any special tools that you would like." Um, and so I'm more than happy to try to leverage that with the VA, to tell them here there's a veteran that wants to get into agriculture. He's a little height deficient and would like a rake or some other shape of it. I'd be happy to connect and try to get there on that. That'd be kind of a fun project.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be fun.
Yeah,
I
so
would really, my back would love that.
yeah. So I'll put my information out there and just email me, and then we can get with our assistant technology professional and see kind of where to go. Like I said, a lot of times this device right here, you'll see that it has you'll see a like device where this part right here goes through your arm goes through it, so that
Mhm.
you're not grabbing onto kind of a longer pole, or you kind of have a different leverage point on it. See how your kind of leverage point is different on that. They just make
Yeah.
these for long poles as well. Does that help you a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, send me an email. I'd be happy to get with Ned, our engineer, who's got the connections with the VA, and see if maybe we can create something new for you.
Awesome. Thank you.
So I'm going to go back to the box real quick. Any other questions out there I can jump on? Okay. So if you're looking for resources in your state, should I get the right one? If you're looking for resources in your state, again, this is the updated state map. You see Washington is dropping in September. California is being added. You can click on the yellows and the whites, and it will come up with the information on in that state, or you can click by state down here. So some states will do a cross border assistance, and if they have the manpower and the funding to do that, but at a minimal, you can send us at Agrability a note, and we will discuss with you at least via phone kind of opportunities and kind of give you a phone consultation on it. So I'm going to go into New Mexico right here. Click on New Mexico. You'll see some projects will have their own website for Agrability. So you can go into the Agrability website, what they do, kind of where they support. Each Agrability has to have a nonprofit partner. So it's part of the grant requirements. And you'll see some of the partnerships out there. You got New Mexico State, New Mexico Technology Assistance Program, Mandy's Farm, and New Mexico School of Medicine. So you'll see that us in Indiana, so we have two projects actually in Indiana. We have the national project, which covers the nation and some of those gaps that don't have projects. And our national program is with Goodwill of Finger Lakes. Our Indiana program is with Crossroads of Easter Seals, or Easter Seals of Crossroads, for our nonprofit partner as a state program. But you'll see kind of New Mexico, you'll see some of the great things they're doing. And so they are, like I said, across the country in 22 states now, but that changes based upon funding and abilities. Go back to Agrability. It also gives you some great emails. Robert Hagavort's a great guy. I've talked to him most recently last week. Sonia, Patricia, and you'll see kind of what they do and who's in the program and kind of how they kind of work. Each state is not directed specifically by the national program. The national program really coordinates with the states, and the states get a lot of flexibility to run their program based upon state um, state requirements or state kind of processes. Mandy's Farm, if you're ever in New Mexico, is a great farm. They help people or um, minorities, kids under the age of 18 that have uh, that are going to be challenged with the capacity to um, get jobs. So Mandy's Farm is a farm where they take young children with autism and other kind of developmental challenges to teach them farming. And then when they leave Mandy's Farm, they get the opportunity to, look at jobs and other things that are maybe within their scope of limitations as well. So some really beautiful programs out there. One other state I would highlight, and we can go towards you guys, is Pennsylvania has a very strong program as well. If you're going to stay on the East Coast, and they go out with a lot of assistance as well to help out in Pennsylvania. One other thing I wanted to direct you to is going to be the resources and training. So under resources and training, you can also look up some resources as well. So when the toolbox is giving you issues, you can look up arthritis. And you'll see some of our pamphlets out there. All our pamphlets are online. Some of them are in Spanish as well. Arthritis and gardening. And you'll see, so if you were to go to a fair or a state fair or something where Agrability is at, you'll normally see these type of pamphlets laid out on the table, and you'll see some things about arthritis and gardening on preparing your gardening and activity. One of the things that you really start to learn with Agrability is every kind of body position matters, and that things can be adjusted to help. So if you're not into raised bed gardening, this here's a picture of kind of a raised bed garden. If you build your raised bed in such a way that it has kind of this lip on it to sit on, it certainly makes it a little bit more functional for somebody that has maybe an issue with their back or other problems. The other thing I would say is it is sometimes, sometimes the distance matters so you can properly reach across it. Sometimes you'll see containers are good to do, as well as, the proper trellises. So really there's just a plethora of things in here that you can read about under resources, under Agrability, and kind of their resource list. Um, Again, I could just go through hundreds of topics in there. Let me throw one more out there that we probably all um, are interested in, and there's back health as well. So you can get into some back health, back in the saddle program as well, and pamphlets. Taking a little bit of time. That's probably more of my bandwidth than it is. There it goes. So you'll see right here the pamphlet on back and how to types of back problems, causes, preventing, managing, treatment. Again, not it is properly reviewed for the discussion. Um, so it is I don't want to say medically aligned. I mean, don't do back surgery based upon an Agrability pamphlet, but it certainly has been reviewed by medical professionals to make sure that it's accurate, and assisted technology professionals to talk about, posture and body mechanics, the way to do things, some things to just consider, some general lifting principles. Most of us in the military have learned to lift with your legs. Some handling, and so sometimes another thing to consider is sometimes dealing with livestock is a little different. So handling livestock when you have a bad back, where it may jerk or move, is maybe you need to get a special chute. Maybe you need to get a chute because you've been doing it with your hands the whole time. Just all those things, and you'll be surprised, if you get a Agrability assessment for your farm that has animals on it and you don't have a chute and it becomes a recommendation, we will, help connect you again to vocational rehab and say, hey, this is their job, and they have an injury, and this is the way that you can, help that they can overcome it and continue on in their livelihood. So please, use us and use us often. I think most of our clients, when they have contacted us, have been pretty pleased with the work and the connection. But like anything, it does take time, so don't don't think it's going to be Agrability coming there with a credit card buying a lot of stuff. So it is us coordinating with, again, VA and vocational rehab. And then so you'll see a bunch of every state, like I said, does their own fact sheets and stuff. And we put it all on there just so that people can see the opportunities there for resources. One other thing I'll highlight is veterans. We do have a veteran page as well. Great video here. If you want to watch it, there's Sarah Creech, who's one of our local veterans for us as well. And we do underserved populations. The Life Project is our current partner with that under what's called a 2501 grant. There are videos for those that are more interested in a video, visually receiving information in a video content.
Could you mention who qualifies as an underserved population?
Great question. Actually, in some definitions, veterans are considered an underserved population. And then it is usually the standard, what they call BIPOC, and that's Black, Indigenous, people of color. And then it is also usually American Indians. And I don't think sexual orientation is in there, but it could be. Do you know for sure yourself, Tricia?
I don't know about sexual orientation, but under some definitions, women are in there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Women are usually in there as well. USDA and you'll see almost on all USDA information now, they're going through kind of understanding past discrimination practices. In January, opportunity for people that had felt over the past, I think it went as far as 10 years, felt discriminated against, could apply for monetary benefit from it. And that included veterans as well and people with disabilities. Agrability was involved in that as well because people with disabilities could have been discriminated against. So we helped there as well. You can see all the YouTube channels out there that we have. You'll see some of the videos. Lori Hain is pictured right there. She was our speaker, not at the one in March, but a year ago. Lori Hain was a speaker at our national workshop. She was hit by a combine, and she has lost her left side of her body, both leg and arm, and pretty much up. And she's an Agrability client here in Indiana. And you'll see, her goal was just to continue on in farming after the accident. Very enduring lady, and she's, as you can see, getting back into the track. So you'll see a bunch of great stories out here about people that have overcome their challenges in different ways. We actually have a new client out here in Indiana that had Agent Orange exposure in Vietnam and has extreme swelling in his feet and needs to go up and down a grain bin. And his wife contacted us concerned with his ability to properly go up and down a grain bin. So we're looking and connecting him with the VA and vocational rehab to really get into, what we can do to adjust his climbing a grain bin to be able to get to his products. I'll go under the National Agrability Project just once, show you kind of the YouTube page. We did a really good, that's me as well. There's a video here of the adaptive beekeeping and people with disabilities. We talked about SARE grants. If you've not done the SARE grant, some of the stories of Lori Hain, Steve Swain is one of our assistant technology professionals. And you'll just see Ned Stoller's ATP as well. And you'll see a whole bunch of great videos. We try to video record some webinars, at least. I think we usually do it about once a month. We do a webinar and we usually videotape it in some way, form to try to put it out there to help people. What tools are in your Agrability truck? What do you need? And again, sometimes it's very creative. I have learned when I first went to Agrability to put a hoe in back of my truck. And some people say, why do you put a hoe in back of your truck? Well, that way I don't have to climb into the truck to get to the bag of cement that slid all the way to the to the front of the truck by the cab. I can take the hoe and I can reach and I can pull it back and get to that. So again, there's just sometimes some little tricks out there that really help. So I think that's a lot of the website I wanted to show you. And I will share my information in the chat. Is there any questions or anything I can, dig into for somebody?
They're quiet, Joe.
It's okay. They had a long trip yesterday, right?
Yeah, I was wondering if you had specific points of contact or anyone in Maine that I could speak to, because you're talking about the Voc rehab, and I've gone through that to try to get some information on agricultural stuff, and I haven't really had a lot of luck.
Oh, absolutely. We used to have a well, it still is. Let me look up the information right now and I'll put it right in the chat for you.
Thank you.
So there's my information. So if you have any questions or anything or something you don't want to, say right now, feel free to shoot me a note or a call, and I'm more than happy to do it. Eric, is there anything I can help you with Maine or?
No, I think this is a good place to start, because before I was going through Voc rehab, maybe if I contact these guys, they can help me go through Voc rehab, and maybe it'll be more successful that route.
Yeah, no, so that's absolutely what Agrability is there for. So when it comes to something like vocational rehab, and I know here, even at the VA in Indiana, if a veteran goes there and says, hey, I want to be a farmer and um, the VA could very easily look at that and say, hey, you're injured, you can't be a farmer, even though maybe that person has the land that they inherited, maybe they have an injury. Agrability becomes that kind of professional bridge to say, hey, this person has a lot of capability, they can add to the business, they can be successful at it, you know. So what we need to do is just adapt their way of doing things. So Agrability, I guess, would say is also a very good kind of is that bridge that when you go straight to voc rehab and they say, hey, you can't be a farmer, you need to sit in a chair for the rest of your life. Agrability can say, hey, there's better ways of doing that, and it's not right for them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like my left shoulder is titanium, so like the only thing they would let me do is they support me for anything IT or teaching, and that was like it. So maybe this will help me out.
Yeah, and the other thing I would throw out there is if you want to go through if you've been in the VA, if you want to go through the compensated work therapy program, you know, we all know the saying with the VA, once you've seen one VA, you've seen one VA. So if you shoot me a note, Eric, I'd be happy to connect and find a national person to kind of process that or push that to your local VA and say, look at this guy for the CWT program, which is kind of the program that helps with the VA when it comes into businesses as well.
Thank you.
Anybody else I could help out there? Oh, so let me know if there's anybody out there, any thoughts you have after this, if I can help somebody in any way, you know, definitely shoot me a note. And Trisha, that's all I have. If there aren't any questions.
No, that's great, Joe. I think it's a great program if you're a veteran, obviously, but it's also applicable to anybody with a disability, or, if you're planning on hiring somebody or with a disability, you can help to get them the resources that they need to work on your farm, correct? Like,
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it's available to anybody, not just
mhm,
veterans.
mhm.
And I would also say, as you're planning your farm, you know, a 50% disability now for your shoulders, maybe a 90%, or, you know, a 50% disability rating now, maybe a 90% in 10 years when you're still farming. So as you plan your farm, you might want to think of, hey, how am I going to do this in 10 years when I'm 10 years older and a little less mobile? You know, and that sometimes is, you know, laying down paths, sometimes it's doing a specific high tunnel. You know, look at it now before you're in a bad position to do it while you're planning out your farm as well.
Great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here. And anyone, I do recommend reaching out. Joe is fantastic at getting back on email, at least, or he really likes me. So,
I do my best. Sometimes I try to take a week off, so sometimes it's a week.
yeah, yeah. All right. Well, have a great day. And
Thank you.
yeah, got class. You guys can come back at like 5 minutes to 11. And we'll have our next presenters up. Take a little break, get outside if you can. Okay.
To keep farmers farming. Okay. We work with disaster programs and we work directly off of the Farm Bill. So the Farm Bill is a set of laws and rules that come out every 4 to 5 years. And when it's published, then it comes down to us via directives. And then we have programs. Again, our programs at the Farm Service Agency mostly help farmers when there is a weather-related disaster event and or things that happen beyond people's control. I say that because during COVID, we had some unfair tariffs put on exporting of meat. And just because we don't have any giant conglomerate hog farmers in Rhode Island, it definitely affects everybody and it definitely affects the price of pork. So we were able to help compensate them for the fact that, you know, pork was now being taxed as it went out of the country. We also had a seafood program where we worked with the fishermen just toward the end of COVID. Again, they were being unfairly tariffed as well. So again, most of our programs are for disaster-related events due to weather. We help all kinds of farmers, farmers that raise annual crops, farmers that are like orchardists or have perennial crops. We work with people that keep bees. We work with people that grow oysters and clams and kelp. So we work with a huge amount of farmers. The last agricultural statistics survey results were published not that long ago. And even though we're a little roady, we were the only state in New England to increase both our acres in agriculture and our farmers, our farm numbers. So that was really good, information to have. It means we're all out there working hard and trying to keep our farmers farming. So I'll just cover the basics about how you go about working with us and or NRCS and or the conservation districts, because the conservation districts work very closely with NRCS. The Farm Service Agency, we kind of talk about ourselves as the keeper of the papers. So when you want to come forward and work with the USDA, and you need to fill out some basic eligibility paperwork, okay? So sometimes if you've met up with somebody from the district, conservation district, or you've met up with somebody from NRCS, they may have those forms with them and you may fill them out with them. Then there's other times where they may, instruct you to give us a ring or shoot us an email or make an appointment and come visit us so we can help you get through the forms. We are the federal government. We have a lot of paperwork, but we're pretty good at it and we can help people get through it very quickly. When people look at these forms all alone, they get scared because you don't have to answer every little box and every little question. So again, we like to help out one-on-one, handhold so that it's not painful. And then beyond that, if you would like to work with us and get a farm and tract number, now there's multiple reasons why you would want to get a farm and tract number. Number one is if your town or city offers you a tax break because of farm, forest, and open space, you need to have a plan written. And in order to get a plan written, you can get that written through the districts. And Julie, if I misspeak, correct me, okay? But they can normally help out with those plans. And then they would be submitted to their town to see if they qualified for farm, forest, and open space. Okay, so then we would assign a farm and tract number. Okay, farm and tract numbers are exclusive to the USDA database, so to speak. So they're not a Rhode Island thing, they're a federal thing. Okay, but every state has their own database. Okay, depending on where your land is. And we have farmers that certainly farm over the border in Connecticut, and we have farmers that farm over the border in Massachusetts. So you can farm in more than one state. So in order to get a farm and tract number, we simply need a phone call or an email. And what we would do is see if your plat and lot, your property information is available publicly. And if it is, we can go ahead and grab that off of the, where it's published. And we can go ahead and create kind of a digital border around your property. And then we would work with you to have you let us know where you're farming what. Different farming practices, have different things associated with them. For instance, if you had annually tilled crops, we would want to make sure that you weren't annually tilling on a highly erodible piece of, dirt. So annual crops are a lot different than like hay or grazing. Okay. Those are perennial and you're not touching the soil every year. So we would treat them differently. So we always need to know the use of the land, what it is you're using it for, and then we can help you get through it. And that's pretty much about it for a farm and tract number. I mean, again, the basic eligibility is about, I think, 8 forms, which again, we would help you with. Farm and tract number. If If for some reason your town doesn't have that information available publicly, then we may ask you to provide us with a copy of your deed or a recent land survey, something so that we can find the boundaries of your property, and then we would go from there. That is about all, and I would definitely entertain questions. How do they normally ask questions? Raise their hand or unmute or?
They're a little bit quiet, so you usually have to stare at them for like 10 seconds and then someone will ask a question.
I have a question.
Here we go.
So how do you get started? Who do you email? Who are the phone calls? And how do you establish what programs would work?
Great question. So basically, once we have you fill out the basic eligibility paperwork and we, identify the different parts of your land that you're using, we would ask you to file an acreage report. It does cross all planes. So we do it for oyster people, we do it for bee people. We need to keep track of what it is you have. So once we know what you have, then we can reach directly back out to you and let you know, hey, this program came up. Or you can go online and register to receive our newsletter once a month. And the newsletter will talk about active programs and deadlines and things of that nature. Yeah, I did have a slide with my contact information on it, but I could not figure out, I have it in a safe place. So I can drop it in the chat. We have a chat someplace, right? I can drop my contact information in the chat so that you all have it. And I'm happy to answer more questions.
So my experience with the FSA was I found them at an agricultural conference and Cheryl explained to me all about the USDA and how it works. But we set up a meeting and they had all the paperwork ready with everything highlighted and they were like, sign here and fill this in here. And it was so easy. And then occasionally I get like letters in the mail or something with like a form and it's like pre-filled out and I just need to like sign it and date it and send it back in. It's so easy to do. And they came to the property. It was super low stress and just helped me fill out my acreage report and what I'm growing and what sections, and I was able to get crop insurance. It was, it seems like an intimidating process, but it wasn't. And you sometimes need that farm and track number if you're applying for grants. Right, Cheryl? Like it's, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that was my question was like, why do you need a farm and track number? For what purposes? Like what does it provide and what do you use it for?
So pretty much you don't need one unless you would like to come forward and work with the USDA to get federal funding for certain projects. And once Julie starts talking, she'll talk about more conservation programs and more programs that kind of relate to you. I mean, I could tell you a few of them that we have. So for instance, if you have, a patch of blueberries, we have a program called the Tree Assistance Program. So if for some reason we have some bad weather and all of your blueberry bushes die, we can help compensate you to remove the dead bushes, treat the soil, plant the new bushes, and buy the seedlings. We have a program kind of like that for bees. So if you're doing best management practices on keeping your bees and you end up losing your beehive because of winds or cold or, some weather related event, we can get you some compensation back to buy new bees and get new bees out there and installed. We do offer an insurance type program on crops, cut flowers, annual crops, oysters. We also have a farm loan department that can loan you money two different ways, operating loans. So that's like money to get you off your feet and buy some equipment to get you going. And if you've already been a farmer for a few years, then you could potentially look at getting a loan for ownership, but you do have to have some farming experience under your belt, you know, with your taxes filed properly and showing, you know, that you're actually growing stuff and making some money.
Yeah, I would explain it like Cheryl, the whole farm and track number is part of registering your farm with the USDA. So that way the department knows what kinds of crops or animals that you're growing. You can also, we also work with forest landowners for forestry practices. And, you know, some people do agroforestry. Excuse me, in addition to like oyster growers, we work with urban growers, you know, people who have community gardens or small urban or suburban plots. And it's just the farm and track number is basically we're mapping your farm. Like, so if you have a number of different kinds of operations on your farm, so you might have crops in one section, and you might be growing like chickens or goats in another section, and maybe have some forest land in another section. And that way we can map out the different areas, figure out how much land you have in each area, and like I said, what kinds of production you're doing, so that in case there's a program available to assist with any of those, we can let you know. In case a disaster happens, like we have a drought or flooding or something like that, and it damages one of your growing areas, one of your operations, we also have that information on file, so that if you apply for assistance, we can go back and check that quickly. So it's like part of our record keeping. And it's also what NRCS uses to develop a conservation plan for your property, for your ag land. We will look at your different land types, your different soil types that you have. Like some soil, as Cheryl mentioned, may be highly erodible. Some soils may be wet, like a wetland soil, or some soils may be, you know, perfectly fine, and you can do all kinds of operations on them. So we look at a number of different factors on your farmland when we're setting up a conservation plan, and I'll talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I'm starting a flower farm up in Troy, Maine, and I actually had a NRCS agent come out, and I did my soil test, and then he came out and you know, I just wanted to like have him look at the soil and tell me if it was farmable, because it was owned by a lumber company beforehand. And they had cleared like an area already of trees. So I'm using that as my farmland. And he was outstanding. Like he came out right out. He met me out there, and it was very helpful. It made me feel a lot better that like the land that I had bought was gonna work, you know, that type of
Great.
thing. Yeah.
Fantastic.
So yeah.
I have a question about loans. I was approved for a high tunnel grant through the NRCS. I'm just curious if you guys like kind of do bridge loans, I guess, to cover the cost before the installation's approved by the agent.
Yes.
That's a
do.
common thing you guys do.
Yep.
And I mean,
So
are
did you already apply to NRCS?
yeah, I think I've been committed on that. So in the next year, I'll be installing it. And I think that as far as I can tell, all the money's been cleared, and I just got a few more papers to sign over there. But just trying to figure out exactly how we're gonna
Can I
finance
get
it.
your name so I can look you up and I can have one of our loan officers call you?
Yeah, that works. Yeah, that's Arthur Wilkins. And I'm in Milo, Maine.
Oh, okay. So you're in Maine. Hang on.
I mean, I've got a pretty good relationship with the NRCS office over there. So, I mean, I didn't
Yeah.
even think
What
about asking him about this.
what county are you in?
It's Piscataquis.
Okay.
And Seth Jones is the my kind of rapper agent, whatever you call him.
Yeah. So, yeah, so you could reach right out to him, but I can definitely get in touch with their office and let them know that you would be interested.
Yeah, it just kind of depends on what the rates are and what would make the
Yeah,
most
so
sense.
they're normally lower than the average rates.
Mhm.
And you know, you need to not qualify for commercial credit someplace else, like Farm Credit East or whatever.
Interesting.
But yeah, definitely, they can help you out, and you would sign a piece of paper saying that as soon as NRCS got the money, they would just automatically send it to us, and then you could continue on your percentage of, you know, the practice that you owe, keep it in the loan, or you can pay it up or do whatever you want.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so yeah, if you want to send me some information, that'd be great. And I'll also
Yeah.
make sure to talk to him about that. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no problem.
And the other thing that NRCS offers for what we call historically underserved farmers, which are beginning farmers and ranchers, or limited resource farmers and ranchers, or socially disadvantaged farmers, you can request an advance for your practice, because for NRCS practices, we will provide reimbursement. So if you have a high tunnel practice, you'd need to purchase the high tunnel structure and have it installed, and then our NRCS conservationists go out to your property and inspect, for lack of a better word, your high tunnel to
Mhm.
make sure it's installed according to our standards and specifications. And once it is, they'll approve the practice, and then you get reimbursement funding. But if you qualify for underserved funding, then you can request up to a 50% advance payment. And that can help you with either purchasing supplies or funding the installation of the practice. And the thing with the advance is, I think once you receive the advance, you have to I
Spend it
think you
within
have to
60
start
days.
buying, you have like
Yeah.
90 days to start buying your
Mhm.
materials and supplies for the practice. So there is that one caveat, but that is another resource that's available to you.
Okay, great. Yeah, we'll pick Seth's brain about that.
Yeah.
Thank you. I guess while I'm talking, I can just say that I went through the whole process with the FSA, and the agent did make it really easy. So I definitely suggest just finding your county office and developing a relationship. They're super cool. I can just kind of walk in there whenever, and they're very helpful. So very
Well,
much pro NRCS and FSA.
it's
Great,
funny
thanks.
that both of you guys who have asked questions are from Maine, because we have a few of our Rhode Island farmers that retire up to Maine or retire up to New Hampshire. So we start working with them in 2 states until, you know, they get things taken care of and move. So, yeah, and we do a lot of regional trainings and stuff. So we have friends in other states.
Yep.
Do we have any other questions for Cheryl before Julie kind of rolls into NRCS? Go ahead, Meredith.
Just a really specific question. I also qualified for a high tunnel through NRCS, and I was dealing with Nate Lucas.
Okay.
Anything as far as moving? I'm going to be growing figs. They're growing right now. I just had to go check on them.
Oh, nice.
Money or loans or anything for 2 things: hooking up electricity for the fans because it's really hot in there already, and irrigation. Any information on that would be wonderful.
Julie, do you want to take it with the irrigation, or?
I can take it with the irrigation. So, yeah, if you're working with Nate, then you can ask him about irrigation practices within your high tunnel. We do have practices for micro irrigation, drip irrigation, and yeah, so he should be able to request. We usually have I think irrigation is one of the practices that we have to have one of our engineering staff design, just for, you know, in terms of how much water is needed for a certain size, and the pumps that are needed for that, and that kind of technical information. But we do offer micro irrigation and drip irrigation practices through NRCS. We do fund that. And regarding energy, I'm not sure if you want to take that one, Cheryl.
Yeah, so I believe, I'm not in the loan department, so, but certainly I can pose that question. Um, Rhode Island has a big energy grant program that work across the boards with NRCS, with rural development, and with the state to help with energy costs. And those are grants rather than a loan. And I don't 100% know if a loan, an operating loan, I believe it kind of has wide girth. So I don't think it's specific for one thing, but I certainly can have one of our loan officers reach out to you if you'd like.
Okay.
What
That
is
would-
the grant for the energy?
That's the
Um,
Rural Energy for America grant. That's through the Rural Development Office. And they provide grants for energy audits, energy assessments, looking at your energy usage, the kinds of equipment that you're using, whether you can improve your efficiency or look at like alternative energy like solar or something else. So my cat does that too. So yeah, so they provide information, they provide grants to assist with renewable energy and energy efficiency for farm businesses.
And Meredith, since you mentioned figs, I saw there was a fig class coming up next week. Did you see that about how to propagate them or whatever?
It did, and I took the first one up at Roger Williams Botanical Center with Sandy, the fig mama, and I'm gonna try and get her down here to Tiverton and see if she'll do one here. We're working on that right now. So she is like a plethora of information. So
Cool.
yeah,
Cool.
Fantastic.
so interesting.
Yeah, I'm always interested in learning something new and then discovering something, that I don't know about. I know we have a couple of farmers that are orchardists or have other things, and then they just started off with a few figs for themselves, and then it just, it's like chicken math, I think, with figs.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
I could ask one more about just I ask this every time I talk to anyone involved with the USDA is if there's any sign of potential grant money coming down that I could apply to drilling a well for ag purposes. I know wells are kind of weird because there's no guarantee that it'll work out, but it's a pretty big cost and an important thing that I need to get done in the next couple of years, a separate ag well. So I'm not sure if you've heard about anything in the pipeline, but
So I can speak up first because we had a drought in 2020 and then we had another drought in 2022. The Rhode Island FSA office was able to ask for funding for farmers to put in wells through the emergency conservation program. It's not a guaranteed program. It's a program that there has to be enough of a need. And then basically FSA gets together, some numbers. Okay, we have 50 people that are interested in this, and then they have to go to our national office to ask for that money. The benefit of if ECP would be available is you don't have to do a lot of the farm plans that NRCS requires. But I'll let Julie take it because NRCS does fund wells.
they do. Okay.
Yeah, wells are one of our practices that we fund. And again, if Nate has been out to your farm and done a resource assessment, that's.
Oh no, he's in Maine.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot about that. You're not the farmer with Nate.
No.
Excuse me. Your NRCS conservationist should have, when he was visiting you on your farm, done a resource assessment of all the different resource concerns that you might have regarding soil or water or plants and animals. And you know, access to water for your farm is one of the resource concerns that we do address through our agency, and wells are one way of addressing that problem. So I would definitely speak with him about it. The thing with a well is that you, as you said, you're not guaranteed that you may find water. I mean, or if you do, it might be really deep. It might be very expensive to access it.
Mhm.
So it might be worthwhile to do a little bit of investigation with your local Maine Department of Natural Resources to see if they have any information about what the groundwater is like in your area where you live, before, just so you can get an idea of how much the approximate cost would be to put in a well, and like how accessible groundwater might be in your area. So it's something to that's worth doing a little bit of investigation for, but definitely bring that up with your planner and, you know, say that this is an area that you know, you're really interested in.
Great. Yeah. Follow up with him on that. Thank you.
Julie, there are some people in the class who might not know what NRCS is. There's some more people who have a couple years of farming, but we have some very beginner who are thinking about starting farming. So could you explain what your branch of the organization does?
Sure, and I have a presentation that I
Oh,
can
okay.
share with you.
Julie, I wanted to make one comment before you
Sure.
get started. When you were talking about the lesser served producers, I believe we also consider veterans
Yes.
that have just gotten out of the service in the last 10 years in that category as well.
Yes, that's correct.
All right, just wanted, I forgot about that. It popped into my head, and so take it away, Julie.
Okay, well, let me see if I can figure out how to share this. Here
It's not as
is,
easy as you think. But there's a share screen on the bottom, the green button.
all right, here, let me share, and I'm gonna share my presentation. I'm gonna do share. All right. Can you see that? Oh, you know what? Let me do it this way. I'll do my,
Change your view.
yeah. Okay, can you
Looks
see
good.
that now?
Yes, looks good.
Yeah. Look
Okay.
at that Swiss chart.
Yes. Excuse me. I'm a little bit congested today. So, my name is Julie Wright. I am a outreach coordinator and public affairs specialist with the Natural Resources Conservation Service in Rhode Island. We serve farmers and forest landowners, urban growers, oyster growers across the state. We are one of the agencies in the Farm Production and Conservation FPAC, they call it Center. And so FSA, Cheryl, is our sister agency, as is Rural Development, and RMA, which I don't, RMA, Resource Management Agency, is that what it stands for, Cheryl? Not really quite sure. But NRCS, our Natural Resources Conservation Service, our mission is to help farmers conserve their resources on their land. We deliver conservation solutions so producers can protect the natural resources and feed our population. I'm personally not a big fan of the word producer. That's why I always say, I always think of film producers when I hear that word. But we help farmers, we help ranchers, we help forest landowners, we help oystermen and kelp growers and urban growers and all kinds of different production, you know, food production operations to conserve resources on their properties, on their farms, so that they can improve their production. So our vision is clean and abundant water, healthy soils, resilient landscapes, definitely climate resilience, and thriving agricultural communities. And all of our programs, this is very key, all of our programs are voluntary. We're not a regulatory agency. We can't tell people what to do. It's a voluntary agreement that you enter into with our agency. We provide one-on-one personalized advice with our farmers and landowners. We help our clients to make investments in their operation, and we generate, manage, and share data and technology and standards to help our clients make informed decisions about how they're going to use their land and their resources. So yeah, in a nutshell, we help growers make good conservation decisions. I have that twice, do I? There we go. All right. I just said that, didn't I? So we have a number of different programs. Our most popular program is called the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. And basically through this program, we will have you would contact our offices, our NRCS offices, or even our conservation district offices, and request that a conservation planner come out to your farm or your property and do a resource assessment to learn about what your goals are for your farm. So we provide that technical assistance that you don't necessarily have to apply for one of our funding programs. We provide technical assistance free of charge for farmers. We can help you develop a conservation plan for your farm. That's our first step before you move into doing one of our financial programs. But this particular financial program will help farmers install conservation practices that improve air, soil, and water quality. That can help you conserve your water, prevent soil erosion, enhance wildlife habitat, and also build climate resilience into your operations. You know, as Cheryl mentioned, we've been having a lot of droughts. Conversely, this year we've been having flooding. So I'm sure you've noticed that we've been getting a lot more extreme variations in our climate. And so a lot of our practices are designed to help to build resilience into your farming operation so that can withstand either one of those extremes. We accept our applications year round, but we do have various batching deadlines so that we can look at a batch of applications and rank them. We have some questions and criteria that we look at for each application to see how many resource concerns it will address, and then we'll go through and our conservationists will rank it, and then we'll do obligations to to generate contracts so you can have a contract to put conservation on your land. We have another program called the Conservation Stewardship Program, which is our largest program across the country by the amount of land that's enrolled in the program. So if you're already working with us, or if you're already doing a really good job of conservation on your farm, we help you take that to the next level. We help you to maintain and expand your conservation activities and improve them through enhancements. Things like cover cropping or crop rotations, excuse me, different kinds of plantings. We've raised our minimum annual payment for our conservation stewardship program to $4,000 a year so that it provides more options to our farmers. And again, with this program, we NRCS accepts our applications year round. So some of the common conservation practices that we offer here in Rhode Island are what we've mentioned earlier is a high tunnel. A high tunnel is similar to a greenhouse. It's a covering that allows you to extend your growing season. The difference between a high tunnel and a greenhouse is basically the crops are grown in the soil. They're not grown on like raised tables like you might see in a greenhouse. So the crops are actually grown in the soil. Many times we'll provide micro irrigation practices with that as well. And also soil health practices. So that would be something like mulching. You can see this one has mulch in between the rows of crops. It'd be mulching, maybe composting. We have some other soil health amendment practices. Soil health is a big concern with our agency. We're trying to improve the health of the soils so that you can grow more productive crops in your land. We can also provide funding for pollinator habitats and safe manure storage areas. There's a whole host of different practices. We provide practices for rotational grazing if you have livestock. And we can also provide livestock watering systems. We provide assistance to oyster growers through oyster habitat restoration practices. So there's a whole wide range of different practices we offer. We also offer a number of different forestry practices as well. As I mentioned, soil health is very important in our agency. Across our programs, we recommend practices to improve soil health that improves our water quality and the ability of the soil to hold moisture and water for our plants. It also improves climate resilience and provides other benefits. Excuse me, my allergies are really bad today. So there's 4 pillars of soil health. They are, first of all, keeping the soil covered, having a good cover on the soil, maximizing the amount of living roots in the soil, reducing disturbance, reducing tillage. We have a number of different conservation tillage practices that we offer. And excuse me. And by doing this, we can improve the soil's water retention capacity. We can improve the amount of organic matter that's held in the soil, and that helps improve the health of the plants that grow within the soil, whether it's crops that we're growing, whether it's our trees, or whether it's grasses that we're growing to feed our livestock. We've also received over the past couple of years additional funding from the department for climate smart practices under the Inflation Reduction Act. And so it's a big push that we're doing right now for climate smart agriculture and forestry. A number of our practices that we offer through this program include crop rotation, conservation tillage, mulching, cover crops, tree shrub establishment. Planting trees is like windbreaks or buffers along streams, riparian areas, planting them for hedgerows. We do a lot of pollinator and wildlife habitat planting, where we need our pollinators to pollinate our crops and provide food for us. We also offer prescribed grazing practices, which is similar to rotational grazing, to improve the forage for our livestock. There's a number of different practices that we offer through this, and we have, as I said, we have increased funding for climate smart practices. One of the big things that we're promoting right now is we do have a program to convert, it's called combustion system improvement, but it's to convert high emission diesel tractors and other farm equipment to electric equipment. So if you have like a really old diesel tractor or log splitter or I don't know, forklift or utility vehicle, anything that is a high emission diesel piece of equipment, we offer funding to replace that equipment with a non-emitting electric option. So that's a really good resources that we're offering through this program. As I mentioned, there's a number of steps to assistance. The first thing is to get a hold of us. Call or visit your local NRCS field office, call your local conservation district office and request assistance. You know, tell the planner or the person that answers, you know, you're interested in applying for our programs. You'd like to have a planner come out to your farm and look at it to see what kinds of resource concerns you might have, and how the agency can help you to address those concerns to meet the goals of your operation. And through our agency, through that, they'll come out, the planners will come out, they'll walk your farm, they'll look at all the different kinds of operations that you have, they'll look at the different practices that you're doing, they'll talk with you about what you want to do, what you're currently doing, and then what you want to do, what your plans are for the future, and they'll work with you to help you come up with a conservation plan and a set of practices to help you meet those goals for your farm. And then once they work with you and you have a plan that you like, you can either go forth and do that plan on your own, or you can apply to our agency for one of those programs that I just mentioned. And then those programs will provide you, basically it's cost share assistance. We don't fund 100% of the practice, but we will fund up to, it's like 75 to 90% of the average cost of installing the practice. And that funding is provided on a reimbursement basis through a contract with one of those programs.
Julie, you have a question?
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's
I was just about to type it into the chat. You're talking about the Rhode Island NCRS. Do you know if the main office offers that same come out to the farm visit and do all of that planning stuff?
Yes, yes. That's how all of our offices work across the state, across New England. Let's see, my counterpart in Maine, my outreach coordinator counterpart is Chuck Penny. I can put his contact information in here for you. I'm not sure what the different field offices are in Maine, but I do know that he's our outreach coordinator in the state office in Maine. But yeah, all of our soil conservationists and soil conservation technicians, well, you just give the field office a call and they'll set up a site visit with you to come out and walk your property and discuss your plans with you. Okay. So for Rhode Island, oh, I'm sorry, Debbie, you had a question?
Yeah, one question. Do you have to already have the farm plot thing through the USDA before you go through the NRCS?
Not before you contact us. I mean, if you're just brand new to the whole program, you can contact us. We can do all the, farm visits and everything I spoke with you about. But we will, once you decide that you're gonna participate in our programs, we will refer you to FSA so that they can provide that information for you. So they'll do the mapping to get your farm plot, farm number and tract numbers for your different plots on your property.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? So for Rhode Island, well, for across the country, we accept our applications year round. But for Rhode Island, this is our third sign up that we're offering right now. The deadline is for this year's funding, at least, is May 17th. We're particularly focused on our classic conservation stewardship program offered through the Farm Bill and our EQIP environmental quality incentives program, the Inflation Reduction Act funding through that program. We have a lot of funding still available for that. So I strongly encourage you to give us a call or stop by our office. I have our contact information, I think, on the next slide. Yes, there we go. So our general number at NRCS in Rhode Island is 401-828-1300. that's our main line. It should take you to Miss Jennifer Dacey, who is the program assistant for our field offices. And depending on which county you live in, she can refer you to the field office that serves your particular county. So in Rhode Island, we have 3 field offices. The Northern Field Office serves Providence County. The Eastern Field Office serves Bristol and Newport counties, and the Southern Field Office serves Kent and Washington counties, or South County. Our offices are located on Quaker Lane in Warwick. We're right in a couple buildings down from the Kent County Courthouse. And we also have all of our programs, information is provided on our website at www.ri.nrcs.usda.gov. And also you can contact our conservation districts. We have a Northern, Eastern, and Southern Rhode Island Conservation District that mirrors our field offices. They serve the same. Northern Rhode Island Conservation District serves Providence County, Eastern serves Bristol and Newport counties, and then Southern serves Kent and Washington counties. So our conservation district offices, they also have planners that can help you develop a conservation plan. They can help you actually apply to our agencies. They can help you fill out the forms. And they have a number of different programs as well that aren't funded by NRCS that you might also be able to apply for. So for instance, the Northern Rhode Island Conservation District offers urban growers leadership development training. And they just opened that announcement today, I think it was, or maybe it was yesterday. But that's available. You can sign up for that up through the I think it's May 17th also. I'm going to leave that up here. And actually, I'm wondering if I have. Oh, there's our non-discrimination statement. So as Cheryl mentioned, veterans are one of our targeted groups that we offer special assistance to. So if you're a veteran farmer or rancher, you can please let our planners know when you're applying, and because that will provide you with the ability to get more compensation for your practices that you install. It might put you in a higher level of compensation. Any questions?
Yeah, I'm curious about that like emissions reduction program you're talking about. That applies exclusively to diesels. It sounds like there's no.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
For now.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's a new program with us, a new practice. So that might change. And we have supposedly a new farm bill that's supposed to be under works in Congress. I don't know what's going on with that. I have no idea. But maybe that'll change. I mean, that might change when the new farm bill comes out. But for now it is, yeah, just to replace those high emitting diesel engines. And the one caveat with that program is that if we do fund you for a new equipment to replace your old diesel equipment, you have to basically kill your old diesel equipment. It has to be totally
be sold onto the
disabled.
market. Yeah. Yeah, it
Right,
can be.
right. Because we don't want you to sell it to somebody else, so that equipment could be polluting off in
Keep on
somebody else's
polluting
farm.
and pocket the money. Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah.
And then just another question. I mean, I've talked through this with my agent, but we're talking about how most of the programs are cost share. My understanding of the high tunnel program is there's kind of a flat rate per square footage that they pay out regardless of the actual cost of the structure. Does that?
Yeah. Yes, that's how most of our practices work. And I don't know if I can pull it from Maine, but they there's this thing called the Field Office Technical Guide. And if you go to here, let me go one. Let me see if I can do this page up. All right. If you go to our website, I'll just show you as an example on the Rhode Island website, how you can access it. So please forgive my computer slowness. So this is our website for Rhode Island. If you scroll down, you'll see a link right here for our Field Office Technical Guide.
Julie,
And
you
what
have
that
to share that part or get rid of the cow. We can only see the cow still.
You can only see the cow still. My bad. Okay, let me stop that. How do I stop? I'm gonna stop sharing. Okay. Screen. There we go. Thank you, Cheryl. All right, let me know if you can see this.
Yes.
You see Field Office Technical Guide?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. So this is for Rhode Island. But this website here, this efaki dot whatever, sc dot whatever, that's the general link for the Field Office Technical Guide. And there's one for every state.
Yeah, I think I found the one for me, and I'm kind of working in the background too.
Yeah. So the Field Office Technical Guide, if you scroll down, it says practice standards and supporting documents. And it will give you a list of all the practices that we offer for that state. So access control, that's fencing to keep cows or whoever out of a stream or pond or something. But it lists all of our different practices. And I'm scrolling down here to high tunnels. And it provides you with the standards, the statement of work. There's like a installation. I think this is the installation. Yes, implementation requirements. And it just shows you some pictures of what a typical high tunnel looks like. And it describes what a high tunnel is. Here, let me see if I can make that a little bit bigger. Can I? Will it? Oh, there we go. What the purpose of the practice is in it. Sorry about that. It's to improve productivity and health of your crop. Usually you have to provide irrigation for your high tunnel because it's got that plastic over it, so it's not going to get the rain. And but we use it to the most primary use that we have for it is to extend the growing season. So you can grow later in the winter or the fall, and then start earlier in the spring. And there's usually various different kits that you can purchase. Some farmers actually build their own, but usually farmers just get a kit. And there's all different kinds of criteria available for that. So this provides really technical information about the practice. I'm going to close this out. And then you had asked about the cost though, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'll just reconfirm. I mean, I'm pretty confident that's how it works. It's like I don't have to show receipts. I basically prove the tunnels.
No, you don't have to show
They
receipts.
cut me a check for the 20,000. And I guess the cool part of that I didn't really realize is that if I handle installation and such myself, like I can actually effectively end up paying myself for the work, which is a pretty cool part of the program.
Exactly. What you're speaking about, the cost share, is our payment schedule. And all the states on their homepage should have a link to the state payment schedule. And if you click on the, oh gosh, it's going to be slow again, on the learn more, it should take you, yeah, I don't know why you have to click twice, but it should take you to our payment schedules. And let's see. Well, let's look at Maine since you're asking me about Maine. I to M. So Maine, that would be Maine equip payment schedule. And then it lists every practice in Maine. And wow, this is a really long list. And what the component is, the units, and the here, that's what it is, the unit cost. So if we look for high tunnels, I think I can just search for high tunnel. Well, high tunnel is going to be way down here.
Yeah.
I think it's 325 is the number for high tunnels. Oops, scroll past it. There we are, a high tunnel system. So, I'm not sure what contiguous US, I think it's one that's can withstand snow loads.
Yeah.
But so the cost per square foot for that high tunnel is $5.79 in Maine. For historically underserved, which if you are a veteran that's been out of service less than 10 years, you would likely qualify for that. So that would be, you could see how the payment rate is higher.
Interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that it's beginning farmers also qualify
Yes,
as
beginning farmers also qualify for
underserved.
that
Yeah.
HU payment rate. So for a small high tunnel, this is for small scale farming, which is usually like an acre or two or less. You can see that the payment rate per square foot is even higher. So that's another thing that you should speak with your conservation planner about, is like, which do you qualify for the small scale farming, or are you a large scale farmer? Which payment rate, that would determine which payment rate you qualify for. If you qualify as a historically underserved farmer, which most likely you guys would because you're beginning and veteran farmers, so that's also an additional benefit. You would get a slightly higher payment rate.
Yeah,
So
so I
that,
think as it stands, I qualified for the 695 for the historically underserved
right.
US now. Yeah,
Yeah.
which ends up being a lot of money.
So if you have, like, for instance, I think some of the high tunnels are, I'm looking for my calculator here, are 1,200, I think it's 1,260 square feet.
Yeah, the 30 by 96 is I think it's like 1,800 square feet or something.
30 times 96, right? So that's 2,880. And then you multiply that by 695. So that's $20,000 for your high tunnel.
Yeah, that's what I've gotten obligated for, which is I mean,
Yeah.
the base kit
So
cost is like 12,000, so it's pretty nice.
yeah, so this is the benefit for a lot of the programs that we offer. If you're interested in any of these practices, I strongly encourage you to speak with your local district office or local field office to help you develop a plan so that we can then get you in the program to install some of these practices. Okay. I'm looking for, let me go back here. All right, I'm gonna go back to my main page here. So this is for Rhode Island, this is our announcement. You'll find on our websites, we have announcements for all of our signups. This is our announcement for our inflation reduction, our climate smart agriculture and forestry sign up. And again, it'll tell you the application deadline and the specific programs that we're referring to, and just some more general information about the practice. So whichever state you're in, if you go to the that state's website, and usually it's here. If we go back here, it'll just be the different state abbreviations. So New Hampshire would be nh.nrcs.usda.gov. Maine is ME. So this website addresses are the same for every state. You just exchange the 2-letter state abbreviation. And then you can find all the specific payment rate, payment schedule informations for your state, and all the different sign-up deadlines. And also there should be like a contact list for that state as well. So if we go back to our our Rhode Island NRCS website. Yes, yes, yes. The first thing it'll tell you is on this page is how to get assistance. This is the news releases, this is our programs, and then the contact information. Again, it provides our general phone number and our address, or you can go to that webpage. And yeah, we have some problems with our phone lines. We won't talk about that, right, Cheryl? But it also will tell you information like the phone numbers for Farm Service Agency, the phone numbers for our field offices, and all of our state employees. So all that information is provided on our website. We have a number of different divisions. We have our management and strategy. That's our sort of business office in the state. Ecological science, this is our biologists, our agronomists, resource conservationists. We're hiring an archaeologist, hopefully soon, that can help you with specific resource information. We have a number of engineers that help design some of our engineering practices that we offer, and then our field staff. These are our three district conservationists in each of our three field offices in Rhode Island. Okay, any more questions? If
Well,
not,
Tricia,
thank
you very
you.
much for having us on,
Yes.
and we look forward to talking to you guys. If anybody can't get in touch with their local person and you're not local to Rhode Island, just reach out to us and we'd be happy to hook you up.
Great. Thank you so much, Cheryl and Julie. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you guys. Let us know if you have any questions.
Awesome. All right. So sorry I ran off screen, guys. I just chased a fox out of the chicken coop, literally. And now they're all like sunbathing in the dirt, so I can't tell if they're dead
Oh no.
or I can see them and my ducks are alarmed. So I think I have one injured and the rest just pretending to be injured just to, make me feel uneasy. It's just farm life, right? This is this is what we signed up for. Great. But Deanna, I don't have your bio on hand at this very moment. But you're our next presenter for Land for Good. So if you could just introduce yourself quickly and we can get started, that would be great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. My name's Deanna Levanti. I'm over in Westport, Mass, which is almost Rhode Island, right on the border. And I'm working with Land for Good. I'll give some more information about Land for Good, but basically we work with farmers on finding and securing land tenure. So we'll talk all about tenure and what that is. I came to work with Land for Good last November, and I continue to, I came to Land for Good after working farming for 17 years. I continue to farm. This will be my 18th year farming vegetables, herbs, and sometimes flowers. I live near a gravel mine, so there's often very loud trucks driving by, so I'm closing my window. I farm on leased land. Our landlords are very supportive, and we're going on 10 years on this property. So I bring some of my, farming experience into my work at Land for Good. Yeah, land access is an issue I'm really passionate about. I really enjoy talking with people about their farming visions and dreams and hearing different people's stories about land access. These days, people farm on land in all sorts of different arrangements. Yeah, we'll dig into the weeds a little more about how people are accessing land, but creativity is definitely a useful skill when it comes to getting secure land access. So I'm really happy to be here today. Thank you, Trisha, for having me to come speak to everybody. And why don't I share my screen and we'll jump in. We'll use the chat a little bit to do some polls. If people have questions, definitely put them down in the chat. And I will leave time for questions at the end. I have a pretty big presentation. I'll skim over a couple parts that we can come back to later on. But I would love if anyone has very specific questions, just put them in the chat as they come up to you and we'll take a look a little later on. And if I haven't answered them, then we'll dive in. I want to make sure to spend some time getting into your specific questions and not just on my presentation. So. Okay, can everybody see my screen? All right, so land access basics. And again, my role at Land for Good is I'm a field agent, which means that I work one-on-one with individuals, whether they're farmers looking for land or landowners who have land to lease out. We also have some folks who do more research. But our mission is to ensure the future of farming by putting more farmers more securely on more land in New England and beyond. In New England, we have field agents in every state, and Land for Good has been working on research on land access and tenure for several decades, and we're a national leader in certain topics, including farm succession. So we work with land access, tenure, and transfer. And today, yeah, let's go back to that screen. So land access is just getting to the land and having some land to farm. Tenure is having a secure arrangement on that land, whether you own it or whether it's a secure lease. And transfer, we'll get into this a little more, but right now there's a lot of older farmers in our country and not so many younger farmers. A lot of their second generation farmers or whatever their fifth generation, their younger generation are not taking over their farms. So we do work with farm transfer as a new generation comes in who is not family, and that farm gets transferred from one generation to the next, or even within family, it's getting transferred from the older generation to the next. So today we'll do a little overview about land access topics in agriculture. We'll talk about different types of tenure, how to access land. We'll talk quite a bit about leases, basics of a lease, and landlord-tenant relationships. I'm going to skim over financial readiness and affordability. But we can go back to that if people have specific questions. Then we'll talk about creating a land search and how to assess a farm property. And then I'll overview our resources and services at Land for Good. All right. So land access is the ability and power to obtain suitable land tenure as we see it at Land for Good. It's not just being able to go to the land and take a walk or to plant some things, but to have land that when you plant your things, you know you're going to be able to come back and harvest them. So secure tenure. Access to land is the biggest challenge for new and beginning farmers in Rhode Island and nationally. And in Rhode Island, as in Massachusetts, we have the most expensive farmland in the whole country. We have a lot of development pressure because our urban centers are very close to our farmland. A nice quote from Liberty Hyde Bailey: equitable partition of land is the necessary basis of all self-sustaining agriculture. We'll talk more about equitable partition of land. And this quote is one that alludes to the fact that most beginning farmers depend on leased land, and actually most farmers depend on some form of leased land whether it makes up all of their land or not. Beginning farmers without land debt are more likely to succeed in the long run. But as farmers, most of us really want to own our own land at some point. And if we don't have land ownership, it can be hard to build equity. But nowadays, a lot of people lease their land and they put their equity into their homes instead. So when we talk about farming and farmland, we're often talking about farming and leasing. Farm ownership and land wealth are increasingly concentrated into fewer and older farming and non-farming owners. So some of the issues is that farmers are getting older. The next generation is not taking over their farms. And so they're holding on to their farms, like management and control of their farms and also the farmland for longer because they're not really sure what to do. And that's where farm succession and farm transfer comes in. Also, what's happening, not quite as much in New England, but especially in areas where there's more farming, is that the larger farms will then come in and buy up the other farm. So we're getting larger and larger farms, especially in the Midwest. And 96% of agricultural land wealth is owned by white people, and most of that is white. Nearly 90% of farm landlords are not farmers. My landlord is not a farmer, but he likes to drive a tractor and he's very helpful. Part of what we do at Land for Good is we work with those landowners and we talk to them about leasing their land, what's reasonable. Sometimes people call us and they're like, I have this land and I was thinking maybe I'd make some money on it by leasing it out to a farmer. And we're like, yeah, probably not. Like the amount that farmers pay for leasing farmland is not going to, be much of an income for most people. Farmers of color and from other marginalized groups face additional systemic barriers. Lack of access to capital is a big barrier. You have to have money to make money. That's kind of true because if you have no equity, it can be hard to get a loan, whether that's purchasing land or purchasing farm equipment. When we talk about access to land, there's a whole body of thought, and opinion and feelings that go along with the discussion. I was talking about leasing land. Not all farms depend on farm ownership. So there's kind of this myth of like the idyllic farm homestead. Sometimes when people are creating a farm homestead, they're doing that with income from a previous career and just creating their homestead. And then people are building a business, maybe on leased land before they purchase the land. So there's all kinds of ways and visions and how we access our land. Cultural traditions, competition for sale and lease of land. If you live in an area where there's not a lot of land, the competition can be high. And then just in general, there's not enough support for farm seekers, not enough support for landowners, not enough support for retiring farmers. In the United States of America, we see land as a private property. Land has been commodified. We see farmland being sold for millions of dollars in order to be split, divided, and developed. And it's kind of ingrained in our culture to think of land as property and as an asset, which can be sold to make money. A lot of people buy land as an asset in order to invest in it. This is happening with farmland. Investors are purchasing farmland. So it goes back to those non-farming landowners having more control of the land that is available to farm. Land as a working asset. If you have land, that's an asset. You can work it, you can do something with it to earn income. Farmers obviously see their land that way. Sometimes older farmers, they want to keep their farmland because they want to keep that opportunity there, even if they're not currently farming. They know they can use it eventually one day. Maybe somebody in the family will want to use it one day. Land is identity. and there's a family legacy for farm families. And I would say that for all families, you know, we have relationships with the properties that we live on, that we inhabit, that we work. They become part of our story. Land as stolen, living in New England, where people have come for hundreds of years, and initially land was plentiful and it was viewed as abundant, and ownership was not a concept which was practiced by the people who live here and who continue to inhabit these lands. So we talk about ownership versus control. You may have control of the land, but not own it if you have a solid lease. And then we have cultural, social, and generational differences. We tend to see with younger generations more of a cooperative approach to land, less of a need for ownership. But these are all just topics and things to think about. When we think about our farming vision, how do we want to hold the land? What is important to us? Maybe what barriers will we be trying to overcome in order to access land? What stories will we dream about telling our grandchildren about our farms? We can think about whether we're comfortable with debt. I'm personally very risk averse. The concept of taking out a multiple $100,000 mortgage is like, I don't know about that. But as I get older, I'm more comfortable with that. Are you going to farm with others? Are you and your significant others on the same page about land ownership? Do you have the same drive for ownership? Or maybe one of you is more comfortable with leasing and you'll share that vision with your partner as time goes on. I'm gonna let everyone just read this slide. I like questioning whether the land is affordable. We'll talk more about that, but if we're planning on running a farming operation in order to pay for the farmland, that raises some questions about what it helps us ask, you know, what is affordable? Helps us try to answer that question. All right, so let's dig in. Does anyone have any questions so far? Anything they want to contribute to that conversation? See anything in the chat? Okay, so let's dig into tenure options and methods. And can everyone still hear me okay? Yeah. Okay. All right. So tenure means to hold. When you have secure tenure over land, you'll be working that land, planting those vegetables, and you know that you're going to come back and harvest those vegetables that same season. Land ownership comes with, you know, a set of conditions, as does leasing. If you own the land, we can think about what are the terms and conditions. Well, I purchased the land, but I have a mortgage that I have to pay back over the next 30 years, right? And if you don't own it, you also have a set of terms and conditions. There may be a path to ownership. And in your farm vision, you may do some of both leasing and owning. And sometimes you may change over time. You may go from owning to leasing or back and forth. Okay. So when you own land, you may do an individual purchase. You may purchase land with a group, And you may use some tools like trusts in order to do that, have a group purchase. You may use an easement to purchase that land. We can talk more about agricultural easements and current use tax a little bit later. When you own land, you have to think about how are you going to finance the purchase. We think of more of a legacy being left behind when we have ownership over land. And you may be looking at a lease to own situation. And if you don't own land, we kind of break it down into own or don't own. But there's really all kinds of ways to access land that you don't own. You may have a short-term lease, maybe it's a year-to-year lease. Sometimes we suggest what's called a rolling lease, where you have a 1 year or a 3 year or even a 5 year lease. And then at the end of that period, you just kind of meet and talk and say, hey, do we want to keep this going? And what that is basically an agreement between both parties where people are saying, yeah, we want to keep going, but we don't necessarily want to make a 10 or 15 year commitment. We want to have these built-in check-ins. So that's a rolling lease. A longer term lease, 10 years, 20 years, 99 years. Sometimes lands that are owned by a trust, like a land trust or a town or a municipality or the state, will offer long-term leases, very long. And that can be really nice. Often super long-term leases like that may not have infrastructure on them. And there may be just a ground lease. This is a newer concept that would be in partnership with a town-owned land or a land trust, where the farmer may have a lease on the ground because the land trust will maintain ownership of the ground. However, they have permission to build in certain areas and build equity in the building. So maybe there's some land that has a house on it. So the farmer will purchase the house and the land trust or town will maintain ownership of the town and of the land and lease the land to the farmer. There's also lease to own, which we do see with farmland. Basically, you're leasing. There's different forms of doing lease to own. We'll talk a little more about that in a couple of slides. You may have group tenancy where you're forming doesn't have to be a co-op, but you may be leasing land together. Maybe in your farm, different people have different roles, and you have a group lease. And there may be a license or a permit. And sometimes we see licenses or permits on state-owned land or town-owned land. And a license or a permit is not a lease, and there's a difference between the two. We'll talk about that. So how do you know whether to lease land or own land? There's a lot of considerations. This tool is one of the cool resources that the people at Land for Good have made up. And it helps you kind of walk through the decision of, do I want to pursue ownership? Am I ready to pursue ownership now? Or do I not want to pursue ownership? And you may still be saying maybe down the line sometime I will want to pursue ownership, but at this time, I will not. So I'll let everyone just kind of look at this slide for a minute. It's a little bit dark, but I'll also share this with Trisha so you all can see it. So land ownership can be a financial decision, whether to lease or own, but it could also be based on your life trajectory. Maybe you don't want to be married to one place for 50 years or 30 years to pay off a mortgage. Maybe you're interested in getting a farm business going, but then in the future you want to do something else. So there's all kinds of factors. Does anyone have any questions about what they see on here? Because there's some interesting arrangements on here.
I kind of have a specific question that I'm not sure if it really fits into your expertise. But looking at forming an LLC. I own land. Thinking
Okay.
about forming an LLC for the farm business and potentially leasing land from myself. That makes sense. Like the LLC will lease the land. Like I there seems to be some like liability benefits there as far as the farm goes. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's something that you deal with, and maybe you can just give a little bit of insight. I'm kind of in the beginning stages of researching.
Yeah, I can't speak to that.
Okay.
That's some of the higher level stuff that I'm starting to get into in my work with Land for Good. But we do see, especially like with farm transfers, when you have the farm going either from an older generation to a young generation, or one, farmer to another, they will form trusts or LLCs, and one will lease from the other. So,
Okay.
but what I can do is look it up and get back to you either with somebody who will answer or with an answer to you.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm really just very, very beginning level of someone suggested that was a good idea. So just deciding, collecting more information. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're thinking of the LLC to protect your interests as the landowner.
Yeah, because our house is here. I don't want someone to slip and fall at the farm stand and take the house. So there's insurance involved too. And I think it's probably more of a question for a CPA or whatever to figure out the tax implications of assets one side or the other. So just
Yeah,
was
right.
curious. It's all pretty nitty gritty. I prefer growing vegetables.
Yeah, it's great. And that's why we do we have advisors, right? We have financial advisors, legal advisors, insurance agents are our advisors. They help us make these decisions. But yeah, that's good thinking. I mean, when you have the public coming onto your property and it's also your home, it's a really good idea to protect yourself and your family and your assets.
Exactly.
All right, so leases and landlords. So we'll talk about different types of leases. You may work on having a written lease or a verbal lease. A verbal lease actually is a legal agreement. However, there's nothing written down. So if things did go sour, there's no proof that it ever existed. So even though it is technically a legal agreement, we always recommend that farmers have written agreements with their landlords. If it's a new property, you may want to start out with a short-term lease. You can do a trial term. So you write in the lease, this is a trial term. We're going to try it out for a year or 2 years, and then we're going to revisit. Or you could do a rolling lease like I was talking about earlier. With long-term leases, they tend to have more details in them. But when you start thinking about infrastructure on your farm and the investments that you're putting into a property, you're going to want to have some form of long-term lease with some of the details in there. Lease to own can happen in a couple different ways. But basically it's an agreement between the landowner and the lessee that the farmer who's leasing the land will eventually want to buy that land. Yeah, I'll go back, but so that may look like the right of first refusal if the land is ever sold. The landowner would put the property on the market, and when somebody makes an offer on that property, the farmer who's leasing the land actually will have the right to step up and say, nope, I'm buying it for that amount. They have to match the amount, but they have a legal right to do that. There's also the right of first offer. If the landowner puts the property on the market, the leasing farmer has the right to make an offer before anybody else. And the landowner has to agree to sell it for that amount. And then there may be an option to purchase. An option to purchase is basically what you write into it. It includes a description of the property. It would include a price or how to determine the price. And there would be terms or a timetable and a duration. So like you can lease the property for 5 years, but this landowner is eventually looking to sell it. So they want you to, revisit in 5 years, and, the offer will be maybe they wrote that into the agreement. They want at least 780,000 for it. So these are all really fun tools that farmers are using to access land long term. If there's housing, you may have a separate residential lease because they're very different. When you're renting a house, the landlord has a lot of obligations towards the house. And when you're renting farmland, it's totally different. The landlord might do the snow plowing of the driveway for you or not. The landlord may do nothing. So we keep those things separate, and we recommend people to keep them separate. Thinking about equipment, building livestock, the property may have a barn on it. There may be a pump house. So those details will be written into the lease. If there's any equipment, we'll have that in the lease. And again, a lease is a legal interest. It's harder to revoke. There's more secure land tenure. Basically, if the landowner wanted to revoke the lease before it was up, they would have to go to court because it is a legal agreement. A permit or a license is not a legal agreement. It's revocable at any time, but it can be permission to use the land. This chart talks about this cool concept called bundle of sticks, which is thinking about a bundle of sticks being ownership of the land. If you have one farmer who owns the entire property, then that farmer holds the entire bundle of sticks. They have all of the control over that property. If you are leasing the land, then that leaseholder actually has a legal right to some of that property. So some of those sticks, get passed over to the leaser. And then if you have a cooperative model, then farmers hold interest in the whole property. And then you can have partial interest where you have a bunch of siblings who own the land in a trust. Each one has their percentage of interest, whether it's equal or not, however it is. So that ownership is kind of divided between people. This is just a fun way to kind of visualize the concept of ownership and tenure, control over the property. These are some interesting models. I'm sure you by now have heard about Southside Community Land Trust. It's an incubator model. New Entry Sustainable Farming Project is another incubator model. So there's a central farm, which is owned by usually a nonprofit. They own some of the infrastructure, and they also usually have some staff who can operate equipment to support, kind of a mosaic of smaller farmers who are leasing portions of the land. It's a super valuable model for people who are starting out or people who want to try their hand at farming, maybe aren't so sure how far they're going to go with it or whether they're ready to have their own business. Usually incubator farms are limited to small plots, an acre or two, although I believe Southside Community Land Trust now has some larger plots available, like maybe 5 acres or so. I'm not exactly sure, but also I want to mention Osamequin Farm, which is in Seekonk. They're not an incubator, but they have shared infrastructure and equipment, and they're executing long-term leases with farmers. So similar to the incubator model, but on the incubator, you're expected to be there for a while and then go off and start your own, have access to land on your own. At Osamequin, it's just an agreement that this land is going to be cooperatively managed by different people and access with central ownership of infrastructure and farmers that build their business around that infrastructure and are going to stay right there and keep farming right there. So it's super cool. Another thing we do at Land for Good, which I didn't talk about, is we create a lot of guides. If we have time, we'll go check out our website. And if we don't, I definitely encourage all of you to go to our website and just go to the resources section and go to the farm seekers resources or landowners resources. And you can find a lot of really cool tools and guides that can walk you through processes like accessing land together. Land for Good went and we work with people who are accessing land together, and we help them put together their plans. And then we made this guide by based on that experience we had working with different farms doing this, and then went deeper and did interviews to gather information. And just like went through all the things that you can think about, you know, that you might want to think about when you are accessing land with a group of people. All right, so what's in a lease? These 5 things, when they're in a lease, constitute a legal contract. Who, where, when, the consideration, which is how much it's costing, and the signatures. We recommend that people put a good description of the premises so that it's clear, you know, what is being included, what is not being included. That's part of describing the premises. Say the landowner does not want you going back to, you know, put your canoe in the water on the back 40. Like that needs to be, you know, it's good to have that in there because then it circumvents any issues from happening. All right, what else can be in a lease? Let's do a quick poll. We can put it in the chat. Besides those 5, who, what, where, when, and how much? Signatures. Oh, awesome, Equin, thank you.
Maybe the accessibility and the I don't know what you want to call them, the access.
Yeah, that's a really important one that sometimes people don't think about when they're leasing their land out. They're like, oh wait, people are going to be parking here or driving. Yeah. Conditions for use of the land. Yep. Sometimes we might call that stewardship practices. We have a lot of land trusts that own land and are now leasing to farmers, and they'll have very specific asks, you know, practices, for example, only organic inputs. Yeah. So what's allowed or prohibited? Maintenance and repairs if there are buildings. Also stone walls, maintenance of stone walls, maintenance of driveways. Improvement. If you're going to be establishing a business, eventually you'll probably be needing some infrastructure that's not there. So written in the lease, you'll want to know, you know, can I build a permanent structure? Can I build a temporary structure? Can I put up a greenhouse? And if I build a very permanent structure and I invest a whole bunch of money into it, what happens in 5 years? We recommend that people put into the lease an agreement that describes how the leasing farmer will be reimbursed for investments whose value they have not recuperated, you know. So if they put in a big barn and the depreciation value is, you know, spread out over 20 years, they end the lease after 5 or 10 years, then the landowner could kind of buy them out, so to speak, and give them value for the rest of that improvement, which is now on their property that they own. And this is something people do. And it's becoming really important that people do this as farmers who are leasing land. You can only get by for so long without any infrastructure at all. And a lot of farmers start out with no infrastructure. And I feel like often it's like the wash station. You know, people have all these crazy stories about, you know, trying to wash vegetables in buckets on the ground, or, you know, pop-up tents that they put up every single week, twice a week, in order to wash vegetables, folding tables. Eventually, you know, you get older and you're working so hard, that kind of stuff gets old. So you want to be able to build something, some type of structure. Liability and insurance. Some landowners will require that you have insurance. You should have insurance to protect yourself. It's, you know, definitely worth it. Termination and default. Sometimes we don't want to talk about termination, you know, when we're just getting going, because we're like, oh, it's just gonna be great, right? Like nothing's ever gonna go wrong. We're never gonna want to leave. But if you do talk about these things at the beginning of a relationship, when everybody is on good terms with each other and when everybody's speaking. Then you can you can put some measurements in place to kind of say like, okay, if someone wants to get out of the lease, how are we going to go about it? What's the process going to be? And you have those conversations before things get rough. Landlord's reserved right. The landlord may wish to continue walking the property. The landlord may wish to do an inspection once a year. Also communication, like when you communicate with your landlord and how, preferred method of communication, whether there's a yearly meeting, seasonal meeting. Some landlords are interested in seeing your prop plan. Taxes and utilities, who's responsible. Permissions process, if you are going to be, doing a workshop, having people on the property, doing improvements, cutting back brush. Maybe the landlord wants you to ask permission before you cut back brush. Dispute resolution, again, like how do we communicate? Subleasing, say you've been doing it for 10 years and you want to take a sabbatical and you want to lease it to your employees. You do want to do a sublease. Is that allowed? And stewardship, taking care of the land. For example, managing invasives may be part of your stewardship plan on your farm. The landowner may like for you to see that. This is just a screenshot of a resource at Land for Good called The Elements of a Good Farm Lease. And these are just all the things that we went over. It's a super sweet 2-pager, very easy to read over, and it just gives a quick description of each of the different sections that can go in a lease. A strong lease contains, the bare bones are those first 5 we talked about, but a strong lease contains some of these other ones that we've been adding. And it can be, 1 line for some of these. It doesn't have to be very long. But this is the kind of thing that we can do together with you at Land for Good, kind of review a lease that you've written up or help you write it, or make suggestions for an existing lease to make it stronger. We also have on our website the Build a Lease tool, which looks a little different than this because we just got a website revamp. But it's basically a module where you go on and you can click the different sections and you put in the information, and you can skip sections that if you want to, you don't have to do all of them. But, by the end, then you've got this like beautiful lease document all ready to go. So it's basically gives you some information about them as you go. All right, how to know how much to pay. And this is a question, like I was saying, like sometimes there's a little confusion by landowners. So as the leasing farmer, you tend to do some education to let your landowner know what is realistic. So of course, determining the rent is a meeting in the middle of 2 parties. One question is, what does the landowner need? The property may have taxes, there may be utilities, there's the maintenance, maintaining the stone walls, doing brush cutting, doing snow plowing. Like those are real costs to the landowner that the landowner may not have the resources to cover those, or maybe that's why they're leasing the land, is they'd like some help covering some of those expenses. And then there's what can the farmer afford? And that will depend on what you're growing. Are you cutting hay, or are you growing, diverse vegetables? Maybe you're growing flowers. What scale are you at? Are you broad forking a 1/4 acre, or are you growing 20 acres of dahlias? What's your access to markets? If you're close to urban centers, you have higher access to good markets, and you usually can afford to pay a little more because you'll have more income generation in your business. Whereas if you're far away from markets, you may be doing more wholesaling and less retailing. Dahlia! The age of your business is a factor that goes into it goes into how much you can pay. A younger business, of course, will be able to pay less. But as you go on in time, you'll be able to pay more as you become established. But your business plan is the key factor. That's the tool that's going to really help you know how much can you afford to pay. And I'm just going to go back. I mentioned this, the landowner costs, but there's that word depreciation again. So if the landowner has buildings on the property or recent investments, they'll want to cover the cost of that, you know, based on how much it's depreciated already. Interest, repairs, taxes, insurance. The landowner may be carrying insurance. The cost of the land, I'm also just going to take a second to mention, this is the Massachusetts program, but a lot of states have what's called a current use program. And what that means is that the landowner basically registers their land with the state, and they say that I am not going to build on this, I'm not going to develop it. We're not going to be doing anything except either farming or forestry on this land, or it's just, there's usually a wetlands one too. In Rhode Island, that's called the Farm and Forest program. And what it does is it reduces the amount of taxes that the landowner pays for their property. So if you do own land, it's definitely something to look into. And that can be doubly beneficial to a leasing farmer. First, in that it reduces the tax cost of the land that the landowner is paying, but also if it's a permanent, if it's the farm program, then it has to be farmed. So if the landlord is, maybe they were farming and they're done farming now, their land still has to be farmed if they want to continue in this program. So it's a great way. It's kind of a leveraging factor that gets a lot of farmers on property. And then there's permanent conservation too. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So a quick word about landlord-tenant relations. It really is a relationship when you're leasing property. You'll have a written lease, which is a document and a contract, but having a good relationship is really what's going to ensure that that contract is going to be renewed year after year or term after term. So some basics of like how to make sure that you maintain a good relationship with your landlord. One is, yes, have a written lease. It's really a communication tool, and it helps you just put things out on paper and can help avoid any miscommunications about like, oh, I really didn't want you to till up that field back there. You did it, and now. So have that written lease, do that communication ahead. Provide information on your objectives. Sometimes, you know, your objective may be different than what your landlord thinks it is. And if your objective is to like have people come to the property and participate in the farm, and the landlord had this vision of like just a quiet farm, you know, with like just you out there and co, then like people show up for an event, and you know, just that miscommunication, that misunderstanding can cause problems. But also providing information on what you're doing, discussing your crop and land management plan. These are tools that help you inform and educate your landowner. And the more that your landowner understands what you're doing, the more bought in that they're going to be. I think people tend to get really excited when they think about farming, especially when they think about newer generations or, you know, first generation farmers. So that's kind of a tool that we can all use to our advantage by, you know, telling our landlords about it so that they know and they have some buy-in. You can also provide cost information. For example, if you're spreading, you know, $1,000 worth of cover crop, or, you know, $500 worth of amendments on the soil, you know, letting your landlord know things like that helps them understand, you know, what the operation is like financially. Documenting things in writing can help. Providing regular updates, pausing to talk. It's really important, even if you're busy. We call them like parking lot conversations. Like, you know, you're just running around trying to get everything done, but just taking those couple of minutes to like say, hey, how you doing, can be really useful. And if you don't have time, you know, just say, you know, not now, but like, let's set up a time to meet, like making time to talk. and maintaining communication can be really essential to maintain a good landlord-tenant relationship. Also, pay attention to the next generation of owners. The current landlords are getting older and there's a next generation poised to take over ownership. Then they can be on your, on your radar too, as people who are part of the farm organism, as we like to say. Some basic slides about communication. We can avoid unclear messages, avoid stereotyping, use the appropriate channels. I really like this. I never really thought about this before, but like, I mean, I had never named it before, but I thought about it a lot. Like, I wouldn't want to tell my landlord like something really awful just in a text, like I'll probably pick up the phone and make a phone call, like, hey, or I need you now, I need you now, I'm going to call you, rather than text. Anyways, it depends on who it is. There's no like